phones on silent as well. Thank you. Please take your seats. And as requested earlier, please keep your mobile phones on silent. Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Womenwill Today conference at Global Citizen India.
In every corner of the world, gender gaps manifest in many ways. Too often, in too many places, education for women and girls is seen as unimportant. Over 600 million women can't read or write. In many countries, "It's a girl" is not a statement of joy. And "a woman's place is in the house" is still a common phrase. And when it comes to work, 75% of global unpaid work is done by women. Even when they seek employment, women are hired less often and for lower wages. But the gender gap, in all its forms, can be erased. And today, that is what's happening. Today, women around the world are coming together to learn, to grow, to make their voices heard, to change the future. Today, women and girls in villages and cities are connecting with big ideas and big dreams that only yesterday seemed out of reach. Today, women everywhere are becoming the change agents of tomorrow. And today, they're inspiring us to join them. Welcome to Womenwill Today.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to invite on stage Rajan Anandan, VP Google India and Southeast Asia.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. It's wonderful to see so many of you come in to spend time with us at 9:30 a.m. on a Saturday morning in Mumbai. So we greatly appreciate the time that you're taking, and hopefully the investment that you're making in a couple of hours this morning will be worth your while. I'm delighted to be here with several global and regional thought leaders to discuss a very, very important topic, a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and I know near and dear to all of you, and definitely near and dear to Google. I also want to express my gratitude towards Yuri Afanasyev, resident UNDP coordinator, and all our speakers who have joined us here to share their perspectives with us. During the next couple of hours, we've set up a very exciting agenda for all of you, where you'll hear from all the thought leaders who are present with us, as well as several guest speakers we have, whose perspectives I think you'll really enjoy listening to. This particular issue that we're here to talk about, which is how do we create more economic opportunity for women across India, is very important, very timely. And it's a topic that has been very near and dear to me, both professionally and personally, for a long period of time. Today, we are fortunate in India to see women leaders running many of our largest financial institutions. We have women founders and CEOs of some of our largest technology companies. And we have women leaders leading in leadership roles across many companies in India, across many industries. We're also beginning to see young women joining India's startup movement to found and build and lead interesting companies. While the list of these women achievers is small still, it's certainly growing and it's building momentum. However, for a country that is as large and diverse as India, there are several socio-economic and cultural barriers that we need to overcome to create greater economic opportunity for over 700 million that we have million women across all of India. A lot needs to be done to catalyze more women to join the workforce and create more women-led businesses. At Google, we have been very focused on bringing the internet alive for 1 billion Indians. To do that meaningfully, we need to make the internet useful for everyone, including those who live in rural India. As all of you know, in a country of 1.3 billion Indians, over 70% of Indians live in rural India. Today, India has one of the largest digital gender divides in the world. And it's much worse if you look at rural India. Only 1 out of 10 internet users in rural India is a woman. And if you look at it in terms of digital gender divide, and you look at rural India, we are absolutely dead last across every single country in the world. About 2 years ago, at this very venue, we launched our program Internet Sati in partnership with Tata Trust to educate and help women in rural India to get online. Through this program, we're training women in villages across India who can help other women to learn about the internet and use it in their daily lives. At the beginning of the program, we were only aiming at 5 states in the country, but the success and the impact of the program in improving the lives has encouraged us to go well beyond 5 states and make this a national initiative. I'm delighted to share that in less than a year of launching this initiative, we have scaled the program to across 10 states and are now present in over 40,000 villages, and our internet satis have already trained over 1.2 million women. Today, these internet satis have become change agents in each village and are contributing to improving the lives of the entire community in their respective villages. Our aspiration is to scale this program and its benefits to at least 50% of all villages in India by 2018. So our commitment, and you'll hear us make this commitment at the festival this afternoon, is to get to 300,000 villagers, village by village, and to focus on getting every single woman in every single one of these villages online. And we do believe if we can do this over the next several years, rural India will change in a reasonably meaningful way. Through this program, we've learned a lot. We've learned that the needs and the usage of women in rural India is very, very different to consumers and internet users, let's say, in urban India. Getting access to simple information like weather, government policies, health, education for their children, farming-related information can have a transformative impact on their lives. During the course of the day, you will meet some of these satis and hear their stories. I hope all of you will be as inspired as the Google team has been when you hear about the impact that the internet can have on their lives. Studies have shown that technology plays an important role in improving socio-economic conditions for women across the world and can help women fulfill their ambitions and dreams. And that's the goal of a broader umbrella initiative that we have called Womenwill at Google. You will hear more about this initiative from Miki Iwamura, who's leading the program for Google across Asia. Before I end and we invite our keynote speaker, I would like to thank a number of people and institutions without whom we would not be here this morning. I'd like to thank Shiv Kemka from the Global Education and Leadership Foundation, Urvashi Kemka from the Shift series, MARD, and the Global Citizen India for partnering with us to create this platform. Thank you again for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful morning.
Thank you so much, Rajan. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar famously said, "I measure the progress of a community by the degree of progress which women have achieved." Nothing could be more true. When women prosper, everyone prospers. To tell us more about empowering women for great progress, I would like to invite Yuri Afanasev, UN Representative, India.
Good morning. Good morning, Mumbai. Good morning, everyone. Thank you to Global Citizen and Google and other sponsors of the event for getting us all together here. And I think congratulations go to all the organizers, but also all the activists, all the young people who supported the Global Citizen movement and helped bring it to India, because today I understand we're not only having the biggest pop music event in Mumbai history, but we're also going to see an incredible concentration of young people, boys and girls, men and women, in the room today. And they came, or will come tonight, not because they just want to stand there and listen to music. I hope that is not the only reason they will come to the concert, but they will come because they're activists, because they want to be global citizens, because they already are global citizens. With the deployment of today's technology, you can be present virtually in every part of the world, any time of the day, 24 hours a day. And I think that is what's driving the young generations today to get involved. The reason the United Nations is supporting the effort of Global Citizen and Google and many others, and that's why I'm standing in front of you today, is because when Global Citizen was coming to India, we had a very simple question. What is going to be the focus of that event? What is going to be the focus of that Global Citizen movement opening up in India? And after thinking for quite a long time about the answer, I think the final answer became quite obvious. We are here together to focus on a limited number of goals and targets. You know, the United Nations has passed a little bit more than a year ago the Sustainable Development Goals. And with the most important ones were gender empowerment, education, and sanitation. And this is why the concert is happening today, because today is actually World Sanitation Day. But people frequently ask me, you know, as a foreigner, as an outsider, you come, you serve in India, what do you think are the, two most important priorities in India? And I think I surprised most people by saying women's equality and education. And they look at me and go like, why do you think that? I mean, we have incredible challenges in infrastructure, we have incredible challenges in sanitation, in the industrialization, in, anywhere you look at, India has a tremendous one. And the simple answer I give people is because for many, many years, we in the United Nations have been focusing on women's empowerment in emotional terms. We frame it as a human rights agenda. And that is absolutely right. Of course, half of humanity should have all the exact same rights as the other half of humanity. But I think focusing on it exclusively as an issue of human rights misses a little bit the point and frequently comes across as condescending and emotional and preaching down to people and countries of what should happen in those countries. And I'm sorry, I'm a development professional, I'm an economist, so sometimes I try to look at things from a different perspective. And what I see is a different argument that I'm really glad we're starting to make in the last few years and certainly months, because I know today at the event you're being distributed the high-level panel report that the Secretary General commissioned a while ago and that was just released in its final form in September about women's empowerment. And I try to make the argument in economic terms. I think we have clear evidence from around the world and countries that have moved ahead in empowering women from the economic and political perspective that equal opportunities for men and women increase countries' economic growth by an average of about 3%. Now, I found that in India, a country that is developing at 7, 8, 9% per year, that argument works with policymakers, ironically most of them men, a lot better than the emotional argument about human rights. And I think it is not coincidental that Google today is sponsoring this event because, frankly, we have entered a new era of economics and technology. I think the internetization of our life, which kind of started in the scientific field and then empowered us in our personal capacities and the ability to link with friends and family and businesses, and now has moved into the economic sphere where, online sales are growing through the roof every day. I still think we're still skirting only just the beginning, the first level of what that means to individuals and certainly what it means to many women in terms of how they can economically empower themselves with the use of technology. I firmly believe, though, that, and I'm very proud to be in India and serving in India in this interesting period of history and time, I do believe that in the next 10 years, it is here in India that we will come up with a lot of the answers and solutions to developmental challenges, which will then be replicated in other places of the world. It is just, since my arrival here, it's so obvious to me that some of these answers will be born here. And it's already happening. We're just not noticing it because we're living our lives day to day. But the incredible pace and move that India has taken in terms of deploying renewable energy and delivering that energy to villages, where half of the population are women. And what energy means to women, I think, is an issue that we haven't yet quantified as a development industry yet. But it means quite a lot. There are some studies that prove that once you get energy to a village, the economic activity and the productivity in that village increases by about 50%. And most of it due to women getting involved, because agricultural work still in our part of the world, in South Asia, is still very much dependent on what women do in those villages. But coming back to technology, I think it is incredible what Google and other companies are trying to do in the field of innovation, because bringing that connectivity to women in remote areas, and especially in rural areas, gives them frequently the first ever window of opportunity to look at their lives in a different way. And I was just talking to Rajan behind stage before we came online. And he was saying we are experimenting with, what kind of information and applications women in rural India want to see and want to use. And he said correct me if I misquote you, but he said, I was surprised. We were all surprised in Google that it wasn't what the applications we thought they would pick. For them, it was very pragmatic, very real information that they wanted first. Simple things like the weather. What is happening to the crops? What are the prices? What are the government schemes and programs functioning in that state and that district and in that area? How can I maximize my rights in terms of what the government already entitles me to? So this pragmatic, simple information is what he says the women were craving in the 50,000 villages that they're deploying. And that is the interesting part about technology, that you need to make it practical to different groups of people. And certainly giving women that access is one of the key things that we could ever do with technology. I remember I spent a significant part of my life in crisis situations and in post-disaster countries. And we were teaching our young colleagues that when you deploy to an area that's been hit by a typhoon or a tsunami, and you're handing out blankets and food and solar lanterns and everything else, we were telling them, focus on the women. Because in our just practical life, we have come up with a very, very simple truth. If you give these commodities to women in a post-conflict environment or a post-crisis environment, you have multiple effects that you actually do not foresee when you come into the country experiencing a disaster. Because immediately what things that start happening are the following. There is very little theft because these properties, these assets are given to women. They remain in the families. Children suddenly start receiving food and getting properly fed. All other things start happening because I suppose it's the nurturing power of women that encourages these things to happen. But what we see as a result is a much quicker stabilization of communities that have experienced stress, whether because if it's of man-made or natural disaster reasons. And I think that translates into the argument that I'm trying to make, that the economic empowerment of women leads to multiple economic benefits that frequently we can't even quantify because we cannot look further than the next step. But in countries that have done it, and I'm not just talking about the developed countries in Europe or in the North, but even in many developing countries that have advanced in the initiative to empower women, what happens are multiple and predictable effects. Because when women are economically empowered and they start working and they start receiving salaries, what starts to happen is other industries appear in that market. Because a woman cannot go out and work or start a business or take care of her community without an industry that takes care of children. So you're looking immediately at the appearance of preschool institutions. You immediately see an improvement in the quality of schooling that happens in those communities and those districts. You immediately see an improvement in nutrition for children in those communities and those areas. So the effects are multiple, and that explains the number that I quoted in the beginning of my address to you, which is that we see economic growth of about 3, even over 3% in those countries and in those areas where these reforms and these incentives are created. But I think looking forward, frankly, we shouldn't be overly critical, at least globally, because the indicators do show that over the last 20 years, women's empowerment has worked in many countries. The unfortunate news, of course, is that it hasn't worked everywhere. And we in India and we in South Asia are particularly not very proud of our achievements because here in this part of the world, women's empowerment has certainly been lagging. In India specifically, you know that women's labor participation is at its lowest of about 27%. Ironically, with the country's growth and incredible rates of growth over the last couple of decades, women's labor participation has gone down, not up. And these are the things that I think we should be worried about. And certainly in the United Nations, when we work with government on a number of policy initiatives, we always try to ask, well, what have you done in this policy that would actually encourage the further advancement of women's labor participation or women's empowerment or equal salaries or equal opportunities? Because frequently policies that have nothing to do with the topic we are discussing today, by embedding them with very simple initiatives that could further advance women in society, bring unexpected results. But I think in India we have a long way to go. And this is why we are supporting events like this. We are supporting events like Global Citizen is organizing, but we are also supporting many other things that are happening today in India. I'm particularly proud to say that our agency specifically dedicated to the advancement of women, UN Women, and we have them in the room here with us today, is exclusively focused on issues of women's political and economic empowerment. So with that said, let me maybe finish my introductory notes to you by saying we have a very, very long way to go. And I think in places like India, it's not only what we do in cities where women and girls have a bit more opportunities than elsewhere. India is not just a country. It's a continent with many countries. And I think what is also very clear in India is the geographic disparities that exist and that we note in terms of progress of women in terms of education, empowerment, access to opportunities, access to employment, access to ability to start a business. It differs from state to state and even from district to district. So with all the experts gathered here in the room today, I hope we will have an interesting debate and discussion. Most of you know about this subject much more than I ever will. And I hope to hear a lot of interesting ideas coming out of the room today. Thank you all for being with us today. Thank you for your incredible work that you are doing in your NGOs, I think that's a sign for me to end. In your NGOs, in the organizations that you work with, in your businesses. Thank you to the women leaders, business leaders that are showing the way and showing by example to younger girls what can be achieved across the globe and in India specifically. All the best to you, best of luck, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Mr. Afnasev. Ladies and gentlemen, we now have a very special showcase of women from varied backgrounds. Revolvardhani, Lakshmi, Manvi and Shalini. Hear them and their stories brought to life by a gentleman who has more than 500 films to his name, an illustrious career spanning now 32 years. Mr. Anupam Kher is a name that needs no introduction. Acting repertoire aside, he is United Nations Ambassador for the He for She campaign and a recipient of the Dalai Lama Award for his work with underprivileged children. A teacher, a motivational speaker, and author of a bestseller titled The Best Thing About You Is You. He echoes that every philosophy in everything he does means the world to him. Please welcome Mr. Anupam Kher.
Namaskar. Good morning, everyone. I am delighted to be here, to be part of a conference that believes in the power and potential of women. Womenwill today. My grandmother was the greatest CEO I have ever seen in action. She managed a family of 14 in a 12 by 16 home with such love and care that when I look at myself today, I realize that I am made of many great women for which I am grateful and immensely humbled. We are here to do one of my favorite things, to tell stories. We are here to not just talk about women, but to women. Everyone, please welcome our storytellers on stage. I think clapping should be not that of a 5-star hotel, this thing. It should be a little like this thing for the... The stories you will hear today are from Prakashi, Shalini, Lakshmi and Manvi, and they are icons in their own right. They are using their potential to create their own solutions while addressing education, economic empowerment, community, the things that we all care about. For our first story, I want you to imagine this with me. The year is 1936. Prakashi is growing up in a little village called Johri in UP. Prakashi always was a meethi churi. Her education was self-taught, though her dreams and desires were determined by society. She was married at 19, now a mother of 8 and a grandmother of 17. We all need someone to connect the dots for greater things to happen, and Prakashi's granddaughter Ruby was her smoking gun. When Prakashi pulled the trigger for the first time at a rifle range, it was fueled by a pure instinct. And just like that, at the age of 60, Revolver Dadi was born. Without further ado, let's welcome Revolver Dadi.
मैं पोती को लेके रेंज में पहुंची तो पोती कह लगी मैं अकेली नहीं जाऊं, मैं कहा मैं साथ चलूँगी। मैं साथ जाने लगी तो लड़कों के एडमिशन थे वहाँ, तो लड़के कहने के दादी आप भी करो, आपकी भी कैटेगरी है। मैं कहा बिल्कुल करूँगी। तो मुझे भी जितना टाइम मिला था, घेर का काम, बाहर का काम, सब ये धार निकालनी, घास करना, सब कुछ करके जितना टाइम मिला था उतना जग में पानी ले गए और प्रैक्टिस करती थी। तो हाथ ऐसा नहीं हिले, ये जाम हो जाएगा। तो जितना टाइम मिला था, दिन में भी नहीं मिला, शाम को मिला, शाम को ही प्रैक्टिस करी, जग में पानी ले गए। ऐसे करते करते एक साल, अगली साल मेरा मैच हुआ दिल्ली। तो डीआईजी को बुलाया मेरी कैटेगरी में, धीरज सिंह डीआईजी। तो वो बहुत पुराना शूटर था, मैं 1 साल की खेली हुई 32 बोर में। तो उसे हरा के मैंने गोल्ड मेडल ले लिया, उसका सेकंड का होगा। तो बोला फिर मेडल की नौबत आई, मेडल होगा तो धीरज सिंह एक फ़ोटो करवा ले, मेडल मिल जाएगा। कहने लगा मेडल कैसे कर लूँ ना, फ़ोटो कैसे करवाऊँ, मेरी औरत के सामने बेइज्जती करा दी। कह लगा औरत ने कहाँ बेइज्जती करा दी, स्कोर ने करा दी। तो उनने बेचारे ने करवाना तो पड़ा सा फोटो, मेडल मिल गए। फिर कुछ थोड़ा माहौल बदला गांव का। पिस्टल तो मेरे पास आज लो भी नहीं है, तो मेरा देख के फिर ये मेडल और ये प्रैक्टिस करती का फिर लड़कियों के एडमिशन होने लगे। उनको दादी है रेंज में, कोई डर नहीं बजा। तो मेरे यहाँ होगी 25-30 लड़की, सब लड़कियाँ कहने लगी कि दादी इस उम्र में कर सके, हम क्यों नहीं कर सकते। उन्होंने भी बहुत मेहनत करी। आज में मेरे पास हो गए 25-30 मेडल, 30 मेडल मेरे पास है आज। तो उन्होंने मेहनत करी, उन्होंने आज में इंटरनेशनल हो रही 30 लड़की। तो मुझे इतना गर्व हुआ, इतना गांव का माहौल बदला। उनमें मेरे 30 लड़की इंटरनेशनल होगी, मेरी भी लड़की है सीमा तोमर, जिनने वर्ल्ड कप में मेडल ले रखा। तो खुशी इस बात की है मुझे आज। तो मेरे तो प्रेरणा मिलकर बच्चे इंटरनेशनल हो गए, तो गांव का माहौल बदल गया, इतना माहौल चेंज हो गया। मैंने लगन हिम्मत इतनी करी, मैं उम्र भी पीछे हटाई। तो मुझे गर्व इस बात का है कि आज मैं इन लोगों के बीच में हूँ, ये हिम्मत के साथ हूँ। गुड नाइट।
बहुत बढ़िया।
वाह, अमेजिंग अमेजिंग। दादी आज ना रिवॉल्वर लाए हो आप? हाँ
पर बेटे इन्होंने बोला ही नहीं किसी ने, अब लेकर आना तो मैं लेकर आती, मुझे बोलते।
अच्छा, इधर देखो दादी, इधर तो देखो,
उनको देखो, उनको देखो।
ठीक है।
Instinct pulls the trigger, but it's ideas that load the gun. These are the trigger-happy stories we need. Shalini had been everything a successful woman dreams of becoming, an economics major from one of India's most illustrious institutions. By the age 30, Shalini had worked across a dozen plus nations in Asia, Africa, and North America. She even found the perfect husband and moved back to India in what was the perfect success story. She was doing brilliantly at work and she found herself preparing for motherhood too. Life was perfect. But was it really? Please welcome Shalini.
Perfect it was, or so it seemed at that time, till I broke the good news to my employer. And it was at that time, suddenly, my new role, the promotion that I was promised, and everything that I had worked hard for was suddenly off the table. I had to choose. It was either career or motherhood. And motherhood it was. And for 5 years, I took a break from work. And by the grace of God, after 5 years, I now have 2 beautiful children. And it was a wonderful time that I spent with my children during that break and loved every bit of it. But I think there was that itch, there was that passion and purpose to go back to. And I found myself looking for the road that led me here. But it wasn't available. It wasn't an easy path. It was full of compromises. Compromises which you have to make either for your role or the rewards that you want for the work that you've done so far. It wasn't easy. And it was then that I decided that if I need to go back, if I want to go back, it'll have to be at my terms. It'll have to be at terms of when I want to go and how I want to do and what I want to do. And that became my sole purpose. And it was very fortunate at that time, a woman friend of mine introduced me to what I do now in the field of women empowerment. And it was, my passion meeting the purpose that I was looking for. And today I live every single day working to empower the women from the underprivileged section to take decisions, every single decision in their life, based on their ability and not based on their circumstances. Thank you.
Women are leaders everywhere, look, from MNCs and small businesses to the housewife who raises her children. When we empower women with purpose, we will continue to break down walls and defy stereotypes. And when women support other women, incredible things happen. Like in Shalini's story, what she's doing will seed so many stories in the future. Our next storyteller is Lakshmi Rani. Hailing from a Chotu village in Bengal, her Baba noticed how she enjoyed studying and learning new things. So he got her admitted in the local school. She had 100% attendance, even though her school was a walk that took her an hour and a half one way. Such was her will to learn. Despite being the only girl in her village to clear her secondary studies, financial trouble forced Lakshmi's father to take her out of school. She was left devastated to an extent that she cried every day for 2 years because her one purpose in life was cruelly taken away from her. And if the light at the end of tunnel couldn't get any dimmer, Lakshmi was married off at the tender age of 18. For a truly inspiring tale of overcoming hardships, please put your hands together for Lakshmi Rani.
हाँ जी, मैं 18 साल की थी जब मेरा शादी हुआ। मुझे पता नहीं था मेरे हस्बैंड किस टाइप का होंगे, मुझे समझेंगे कि नहीं समझेंगे, लेकिन वो हमें समझे। शादी के बाद वो हमको बोले तुमको क्या इच्छा है, क्या तुम करना चाहती हो। तो हम बोले हमको पढ़ाई करना है, हम पढ़ाई मेरा छूट गया। तो बोले ठीक है। तो हमको बहुत दूर था कॉलेज, फिर भी भर्ती करवाएं, खुद गए, साथ में गए, फिर हमको लाएं। ऐसे ही चल रहा था पढ़ाई। फिर मैं प्रेग्नेंट हो गई, मेरा बच्चा उसी दौरान हो गया। अच्छा, फिर भी पढ़ाई में कर रही थी। पढ़ाई करते जब लास्ट एग्ज़ाम मेरा जब था, उस टाइम मेरा बच्चा का एन्सेफ्लाइटिस हो गया 1.5 साल की उम्र में। तो मैं 1 महीना में एडमिट थी, मेरा बच्चा एडमिट था। तो मेरा पढ़ाई छूट गया। तो मैम घर में फिर वही रहना। उसके बाद हमको इंटरनेट के बारे में पता चला। इंटरनेट जब मैंने सीखा, अरे मेरा पढ़ाई जो छूट गया था, ये तो मुझे ब्रह्मास्त्र मिल गया। अब इससे मैं पढ़ सकती हूँ, सब कुछ कर सकती हूँ, सब कुछ मैं जान सकती हूँ। इससे बहुत मुझे अच्छा लगा। उसके बाद हम इंटरनेट सीख रहे थे, अच्छा चल रहा था। अचानक मेरा हस्बैंड का एक्सीडेंट हो गया। तो जिस टाइम उनका प्राइमरी टीचर का रिजल्ट आया, अच्छे नंबर से उन्होंने पास की, इंटरव्यू अब देना था और एक्सीडेंट हो गया। मेरे पति तो हमको बोलने लगे, मेरे हौसला हारने लगा, मैं तो कुछ कर नहीं सकता, मेरा तो इंटरव्यू है, मेरा प्लस्टर है, पढ़ाई किताब नहीं ला सकते, कुछ कर नहीं सकते, मेरा पढ़ाई तो छूट गया। हम बोले आपको चिंता नहीं करना है, मैं जीके डाउनलोड करवा देती हूँ, ऑनलाइन सब पढ़ाई कर लीजिए आप। तो अच्छा से 1 महीना उनका प्लस्टर था और 1 महीना में उन्हें पढ़ाई भी बहुत अच्छे से कर ली। इंटरव्यू बहुत अच्छा गया है, उनका रिजल्ट आने वाला है इसी महीना। फिर वो मेरा हस्बैंड अभी हमको बोलते हैं तुम्हारा कर्ज ज़िंदगी में मैं कभी नहीं चुका सकते, जो तुम मेरे लिए बहुत कुछ की हो। और गांव में जब मैं पढ़ने जाती थी तो अदर महिलाओं पुरुष सब कोई बोलते थे तुम्हारा बहू को तुम कलेक्टर बनवाना है, टीचर बनवाना है, तुमको इसको कॉलेज भेज रही हो। मेरे सास मेरे हस्बैंड हमको बहुत सपोर्ट किए, जो तुमको दूसरा का कोई बात नहीं सुनना है। हम लोग घर में तो कुछ नहीं बोल रहे ना। तो फिर अच्छा से चलने लगा। ज़िंदगी में मैंने कुछ सीखा है, तो यही सीखा है जो हौसला रहे तो कुछ भी कर सकते हैं। थैंक यू।
If the uncertainty of life teaches us anything, it's humility and purpose. Lakshmi's will to learn, to find solutions began with herself, but that wasn't enough. She saw that her purpose in life is not to be happy with oneself. It's to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, to make a difference to your community. When girls receive even a chutki of support, they can achieve great things. Manvi is our final storyteller. She's from UP, all of 17, and unlike most of the girls in her village, she's not married. Manvi is still in school, and that stems from the support and belief that her father instilled in her. In a village where girls are a burden, Manvi is a beacon of hope and a brighter future. But it's not easy. Our youngest storyteller for this session, let's give a warm round of applause to Manvi.
Yes, it was difficult.
Wow.
Not just for me, but also for my father to support education of my 3 siblings and I. Moreover, I come from a society where education for girls is a rare thing. So we faced a lot of criticisms. But seeing my father not being bothered about it inspired me. And I knew that I had to put all of my efforts and be the best I could in studies. My hard work paid me. I got selected in Vidyayan Leadership Academy, where I am currently studying in 12th grade. Coming to Vidyayan was another 6th grade. Education was all in English. But the kind of support that I received from my teachers and the efforts that I put in helped me pick up that really soon. Also, my parents' words, and they always tell me that education is the only way to come out of the poverty that we have been trapped in. So that keeps me going on and aiming for higher things. After my 10th grade, I got another opportunity to go on a year-long exchange program to US. There, I stayed with a host family, and I saw empowered women. I saw them going out, taking decisions, and doing what they want to do. That not only surprised me, but also made me really happy that I could see like what I have always longed for. So when I came back, I had already decided that yes, I have to do something about the situation in my society. I have to bring that positive change here also. And now, being recognized at such events, I really feel that I will bring that change. Thank you so much.
Manvi, you are the real future of our country. I think we need to give a big round of applause to their partners, to their husbands, to their family members, to their mother-in-laws. And thank you for sharing your stories with us today. Here on stage, we have 70 years of empowerment of how small steps can achieve giant leaps. From 80-year-old Revolver Dadi to Manvi, who is just 17. Every woman matters because each story provides a unique solution. Dadi, Shalini, Lakshmi and Manvi, these women are our experts, our leaders, our future. So let's do this. Let's add power to what already empowers her, because what women will today will be our future. Thank you to all of you. Have a fantastic day.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a huge round of applause for Revolver Dadi, Lakshmi, Manvi and Shalini. Truly inspirational stories. A huge thank you to Tess Joseph for producing this and Mr. Anupam Kher for binding it all together. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, a large part of women empowerment involves giving women equal and ample economic opportunities. The next panel discussion, moderated by Mr. Vikram Chandra, who is the consulting editor NDTV and has fronted multiple social campaigns, including NDTV's Greenathon, Save the Tiger, and education across schools. This discussion explores opening up a world of economic opportunities. Please welcome the panelists. Amina Muhammad, Minister of Environment of Nigeria, also served as Special Advisor to UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. Chetna Sinha, founder of the first rural women bank, Man Deshi Mahila Sahakari Bank, and Nandita Das, leading actor and director. Please give it up for all of them, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
We sitting here?
Okay. Why don't you come in?
musical chairs.
Thank you all so much. Is this on? Can you hear me? Okay, great. Thank you all so much for joining us. And as we look at how to make opportunities and create opportunities and to make sure that whatever gender disparity there is can be dealt with, I think it's also important to try and understand where it comes from. Because actually, if you think about it, there's a really fascinating book that is making waves. I'd urge everyone who hasn't read it to read it, called Sapiens, The History of the Human Race, or the History of Humanity. And one of the interesting things that comes out is how through most of human history, there has been gender disparity and gender discrimination, although it's not really clear why that should be the case in the first place. So where do you think the problem is coming from? And maybe I can ask each of you where the problem originates from, because once we've understood the problem, we'll be able to find a solution.
The most academic.
Why don't I start with you? Why? Where does it come from, to your mind?
Oh, well, context most of the time. I think we have to be clear about the world that we're born into and what that expects of you. And so in different parts of the world, in different villages, it's culture, it's religion, it's the status quo. And I think that so from the very beginning that you come into being, the eldest of 5 daughters, that's where it all started, was that, my father was not considered lucky to have not had a boy and just 5 girls. And so we were constantly trying to prove ourselves. More importantly, we're constantly trying to impress him. It was never really much about my mother, and yet, my father was never alive to see the achievements I have, but my mother was, and that's what's kept me going and the steel in my spine. So I think it is really about what you're born into and the possibilities and opportunity, and so it begins from the very beginning. Education, education, education.
Education's the way to make the change and to try and do that. But as she said, why this across cultures, across countries, across religions, across time spans, this feeling, oh, the daughter has been born, isn't that unlucky, isn't that sad? And it's not today, it's not 100 years, it's been there for thousands of years, and it's not clear why that should be the case.
I think the problem comes at a 2 level. One is that it's about because you have a daughter, she cannot inherit property, she cannot own anything, which means that you have a daughter, by birth, she's assetless. There's no assets. And if the son is born, by birth, he owns the property. So I think that is one. And the second problem, I would say that which hurts more is come from the highly educated sector. When I say that, what I mean is that the uneducated mother, she doesn't know anything. That is a preconceived thing. And people think that way, whereas it's not. I'll just share one experience. When we were setting a women's bank, we applied for the banking license. It was rejected because promoting members were non-literate. Who rejected? Central Bank of India. So the educated think, the non-educated doesn't know anything. When our women said that, you have rejected for that, and so after rejection, they studied, we applied again, and when we applied again, women were there, and they said that you rejected because we are not educated, but tell us to calculate the interest of any principal amount. If we fail, don't issue the license. So the license was given. We started a rural women's bank. And here I want to say that who rejected? Because we have this, we have to unlearn. We have these myth that uneducated cannot do anything, but our women can manage finance much better. So these are the 2 things I feel very strongly.
Right. Nandita? Could it also partly be men have always controlled? And so from some time in history, it became clear that men are going to be the people who are in control, and as a result of that, that hasn't changed and somehow spread all across the planet.
It is a mystery. I mean, how did we even come to this point where half the population has just, sort of taken the short end of the stick? I think men have provided, like from the Stone Age, they were supposed to be the provider. Today we exchange in money. but we have never valued nurturing, for instance. We have not valued taking care of family, of people. These are things on the side. These are not the main things. Whether you talk of a country, you talk of a relationship, you talk of an individual, we've always given the material provisions, the economic development a greater value, and we have not given that same value to, you know, sort of the social issues. And I think what Chetna said was very right, that we all want young girls to be educated, because education is not only about going to school and having a degree. It gives you, instills you with confidence, it exposes you, it makes you interact with other worldviews, it's all of that. But at the same time, if you see female feticide is most among the educated. Dowry deaths is most among the affluent and educated. So what kind of education are we really imparting? I mean, you know, so I think it's a very complex issue. The point is that we cannot keep saying because there's a historical wrong, it will perpetuate. The hastening of this, the change that is required is just so slow. I mean, today in the 21st century with everything happening, the gap is still so enormous. Still there is so much of misogyny. Still we are so part of a patriarchal society. Till, you know, so it's definitely so deep rooted that we're still struggling with it.
But you know, there's something else that is happening right now, and I hate to sound in any way gloomy, but there was a particular view that people had till maybe a couple of years back, that as globalization happens and technology comes and everyone gets communicated, certain messages will spread globally. So gender equality, this is the norm, and this is the way with the process of history, gender equality will come into effect, you know, avoiding discrimination will come into effect, not making fun of people with disabilities and giving them an equal opportunity. This will happen. We'll all become a slightly better society. But if you look at recent trends, and not least certain election results that we've been seeing in the recent past, is that necessarily the case? I mean, is the process of history leading towards parity, or is it still an open-ended question?
I think we're constantly taking 2 steps forward and 1 step backward. So it is strangely simultaneously existing. It is true that with more exposure, with, you know, the fact that we're in a village also people are seeing, I mean, if Gina Davis Institute, which is on media studies, they have shown that the more women you see in films or television, you kind of, or especially women leaders, you start voting for women leaders, you start believing that this can happen. So the power of the image is strong, the power of information is strong, but it exists also in patriarchy. So in the opening remarks, the gentleman did tell us that, you know, we are lowest in our digital empowerment. So with all of that information, who is getting that information? Who is being asked not to get that information? So they are at loggerheads, and that's what we have to overcome.
And I guess, of course, it depends on how women are being depicted. So looking at the process of history itself, she's right. If you're seeing positive role models, then everyone else starts to say, here are positive role models we're seeing, we should try and emulate them, and that's the lesson to take. But a lot of the lessons that we are seeing, including on television, including on the global stage, are not necessarily positive role models or examples that make you feel that women are always going to be respected.
Well, there are not enough of them. If we had as many women as men, you'd see the balance. We'd have positive role models. I think what is, you know, today I was walking into this room thinking, wow, this is going to be great. Women's energy, this is about women's issues and how we're going to move forward. And I have to say that one of the things that shocked me was that Womenwill today, and so far we've only had men introducing us. Men talking to us.
I thought about the same thing.
And I was just wondering, what is going on?
Yeah.
So, with all due respect, it's just every step that you take, you need to go back to the root. You need to go back to basics. And what is it that you want to project? As women, when we are poor and we have nothing, we come together. As we become much more successful and we crawl up this ladder or claw up this ladder, then we become a little bit like the men because it's a struggle to keep the space that you got. And I think, you know, as we do that, then comes out these women that, you know, before I got there, I think, oh, well, you know, how many women do you say, I want to be like you when I grow up? And to be honest, in the elections that just took place, if we really asked ourselves those questions, if there were 3, 4 other women up there, how many people would have voted for the woman we all thought should have been president? And so I think that just go back to it. My religion teaches me, and I'm a Muslim, teaches me that a woman should be valued, should be put on a pedestal, but who practices that? Who practices putting her on the pedestal and giving her an education, because Islam is about seeking the light? Who does that? The men certainly don't encourage it, and I think that sometimes in times when you don't have is a struggle for power. But who underscores that? Who keeps that going? It's women. And so I think in many cases we have to step back a bit and stop being told what to do and who we are and what we are. We know. And I think what we do is empower ourselves to get up there. And education's not just about the certificate. It's about that whole life journey and having the confidence to say that with or without it, I will succeed. I don't have a PhD. I don't even have a first degree. And I struggled for years with the fact that I was not educated. But look where I am today. And I think that that's about being one of those 5 girls and determined that we were added value to my family, to my community, to my country, to Africa now, and I hope to the world, because I took part in shaping the Sustainable Development Goals, and there are billions of people trying to achieve them. So I think it's just go back to basics and get the strengths from those around you who want to make you succeed, and then we will see it. The stereotypes are the stereotypes that are written into scripts, and they're mostly written into scripts by men. And I think we need to see more women, really applauding who and what we are and taking the lead today.
Right, and if you look at how, when you're opening up a world of opportunities, the importance of positive role models. And if you look at that, I mean, it's not all gloom and doom. If you look at India, for example, there are a lot of positive role models to look up to. I mean, we've had a female, I think we've had the largest serving female prime minister, or one of, certainly in the world, and including one of the first countries to have had a female prime minister. So it's not unusual in India for us to look up to powerful women as leaders. If you look at the banking sector, if you look at the number of banks in India right now that are actually headed by women, probably more than men. State Bank of India, ICICI, you can keep on going down that list. There's a large number of banks that are headed by women. So to that extent, is India paradoxically a country where gender rights is an issue we really need to worry about? But at the same time, sometimes you feel that the glass ceiling may not be as strong as it is in some other countries.
So I would like to share, like you gave the example of banking sector and all that. It's very interesting that on one side you have that, but on the other side, 60% of the population, women in rural India or more than that, do not have a bank account. That is the other reality, right? And so when I say that, and I was thinking in my mind, who are my role models? My role models were there sitting in the previous session. My role models are women who are using our micro ATM card. I'll just share that by technology or the global platform, will that reduce the disparity by itself? No. You will have to listen to these people. And I'll share that when we were introducing our women for doorstep banking, and we were trying to say, you're not educated, we'll teach you to remember PIN number. They said, we don't want PIN number, find other solution. We said, no, it's not easy, it's easy, 6 digit. They were very clear, we don't want PIN number, find other solution. Then we used biometric. And then these cards are used by women by using biometric. The simple thing is, they know what they want, make your solution simple. Don't provide poor solutions to poor people. Very bad.
Ma'am, I can tell you that anybody who got those cards is today very happy. Yeah. And those who haven't got those cards are going to be lining up very soon to get them, given all that's happening with the cash economy right now. On the question of positive role models, in India, do you think we have more than the average or less? Because I don't think in India, for example, coming to the corporate sector, coming to a large number of categories, it's not entirely unusual to be looking up to powerful women and saying, they're the boss. I've always my entire career had a female boss. It's just I can't think of any other different way of being.
But like she said, that that's the paradox we live in. Yeah. That we have. I mean, South Asia, not just India. If you see South Asia, there have been head of states who have been women. Yeah. Does that mean that there is greater women parity than many other countries that haven't? So, at the bottom level, we really haven't. It's not only about, it's like saying, okay, that's unattainable. It's at every level that we have to see. And I think the fact that maybe it's all around the world, that women, when it's a women's issue, women have to take it up. If it's an issue of disability, the disabilities have to take it up. If it's an issue of HIV positive people, then they have to. If it's an LGBT, we do not think that it is our issue. And I think women is half the world. I mean, it's not some smaller community, which also, I mean, even a minority issue has to be taken up by the majority, and otherwise you're going to have complete chaos like we have in our country at the moment. So I think it's very important that men and women think of it as their issue, as we think of it as a societal issue, so that it's not just the women, and largely the women are voiceless. We saw these amazing 4 stories, but there are hundreds of such stories that I'm sure all of us have been privy to or that we know of. They don't really come. So I think there's a greater pressure on all of us who are sitting here, who are far more privileged, who have different platforms to speak about, push the envelope for these women and make it a larger issue for men and women. So yeah, these are very tough questions, and we're always looking for shorter,
Well, I'm going to give
solutions.
you some more tough questions, because as we wrap up, I see we're out of time, but I'm going to quickly take 3 questions that have come in from social media, and let's see which of you wants to answer them very quickly. So, at the Fat Boho has asked this question: does change begin from the youth or from the elders? Which of you wants to take that? From the youth or from the elders?
I think it begins from the both. I mean, to ask these questions, is it this or is it that? It's not possible. Is it a man or is it a woman? It's both. So I think that they both have a role at different parts of one's life. In many cultures, it is the older person that is taking care of younger people and shaping what they can and cannot do as they grow up, because invariably a mother or younger person is doing something. So I think it's both, and I think today the great thing about technology is that we break down the barriers and borders quicker than we would do with those who are older now. And so young people jump across them, and it's a great coming together of different perspectives, so that strengthens us. And I think with older people, there's still a very important part of shaping that community, that society, giving that strength and the sustainability of the things that we have to do. I think many of our societies are broken when only one or the other comes. And I also say, don't exclude the men. I mean, UN Women talks about he for she. Yeah. I think it's very important. It's not just about girls not in school. In my country, the fact that we put the fast forward button on girls in school, we left the boys behind, and today they're terrorists. Today they kidnap us. Today they rape us. Today in the homes that we go into, our culture and religion does not allow you just to divorce because you've got an education. We want a family. We want a community. But because the boy had not been educated and left behind, we're in bigger trouble. So I think it's about the collective responsibility of we, of our, and just put an underline how important women are, and that without them, you will not have a whole. Basic.
That's really well put. Okay, question from Himanshu. With the increasing number of technologies in villages, maybe I'll throw that to you, with the increasing number of technologies in villages, is the quality of life for women improving?
So immediately I would say yes, but at the same time I would say that just technology will not improve everything. And for that I would just like to share another example again. Like, we are working with the street girls. There is a technology available, but how are you going to provide them? And one of the young girls, she said that, I earn daily. She has to earn daily for her dinner, for a bread and butter. But my finance is not safe because she's on the street, staying in Jugi, somebody can steal it. So then we thought, what can we do? And so we are working on this whole providing a cell phone to that. So cell phone can give both, but this platform can have her connected to to secure her body abuse, connected to the different networks where she can be safer. And on the other side, with the cell phone, she can also secure or control her finance. So it is there, but at the same time, the most important thing I feel is that when you provide technology, provide simple solutions to simple solutions, and people know how to use it. Cell phone, people are using WhatsApp in their local language. So the people, those who are providers, they have to rethink, and they have to be friendly.
All right, last question, again from social media, from @Araznat. Why is gender equality such an emasculating thought? And how can men in society overcome this?
That's
You
very
tell me you're the man
interesting.
representing
Well, I
the
don't
panel.
think, I'm not the person, I don't think it's an emasculating thought at all, so I'm not the right person to ask
No.
this.
No, I think, like going back to the election that you were mentioning, weren't we all shocked that somebody who was so misogynistic could actually come to power? Why did it shock us? Were we in a kind of a bubble believing that, this is
You're
a
shocked,
given?
you're shocked that 60 million people voted for somebody who thought that sexual assault is okay?
Exactly. You were not?
Okay, fine. maybe I
No, but the
maybe
fact
I should
is
be more
that
politically correct.
But
Right.
it was something that's a given, right? We have at least come to a place where we have said gender equality is a good thing. I don't think there's an intellectual debate about it, that misogyny is not acceptable. And yet it has come out in the open that in a way it is acceptable. People are literally grabbing women on the streets. I've heard such horrendous things which has legitimized it. So it's really a soul-searching thing, and maybe in the feminist movement as well, we have failed somewhere in only focusing on women. So women are questioning, women are being more vocal, they're pushing the boundaries, and men are still there and still feeling threatened and saying, okay, things are changing too rapidly, is it good for me, is it not good for me? We've made it into a man versus woman thing, whereas
And there
it's
was a
not at
backlash.
all.
Well, I think that's an interesting way of looking at it. And maybe that's what happened in that particular election and elsewhere. So lessons
Let's not
to
do
take.
it here at least. I mean, lessons to be learned.
Yeah, lessons to be learned. All right, thank you all so much for having joined us and shared those perspectives. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you to all our dignitaries on stage. Give it up for them, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Gender disparity exists in all strata of life. There's no escaping it, even at the workplace. The next panel discussion focuses on bringing parity at work and creating a more supportive environment for women. The discussion will be moderated by Surbhi Upadhyay, anchor CNBC TV 18, and the esteemed panelists are Sairi Chehel, founder She Rose, Sapna Chadda, country marketing manager, Global India, and Dr. Asa Torkelson, deputy representative, UN Women.
You want to sit on this side? Yeah. Oh, anywhere? Okay. Where shall I? Yeah, right. Thank you.
Oh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Wonderful morning, and great to be here listening to some of the thoughts that have been already exchanged. And here we are with the second panel and three beautiful ladies with me. So let me quickly start up with the topic that we're discussing. We're discussing gender parity at work. Have we really arrived there? Is it something that is spoken of in external meetings and external public settings and gatherings like this one? But does it actually exist when you're in the boardroom, when you're in the corporate office, or when you're trying to get that entrepreneurial venture up and running? Have we arrived at parity at work? So let's start with some initial thoughts, if we can get some thoughts going with you, Sapna. You're with Google, you've been, I'm sure, working through the years, different experiences. First thoughts on the topic.
Yeah, I mean, you know that there's a lack of leadership representation across the boardrooms and across CEOs. I think the stats are less than 25% of women are CEOs. There's disparity in pay, and there are some stats that make you think, is there progress happening? I mean, I believe that there is progress happening in my own belief and in my own experience. Is the glass ceiling broken yet? Probably not. When you look around, do you see mostly men at senior levels? Yes, the answer is yes. But I think, I feel optimistic. I've had a lot of great experiences myself. I'll share one quick anecdote, which personal story is that when I was pregnant with twins, 5 months pregnant, I didn't put my hand up for a job, for a CMO job at that time. And my boss at that point called me and said, I hope you're putting your name in. And it gives me hope to say that there are men that are looking out for women in the workplace and saying, you better put your name in for this because you're the best person for the job. Yet we have these biases, and I think the biggest issue is that there's these biases that hold back women that are in our own heads, in our women's heads themselves, as well as these unconscious bias that exist in male leaders' heads as well. And we need to change the bias. I think these are fixed mental beliefs that are there. These are kind of habits that are formed and perceptions that are formed. And without changing the bias, these unconscious bias, we won't see the kind of change that we're hoping for.
Okay, some interesting thoughts there. Sari, let me come to you. You work with women across, a diverse spectrum, and you're very well versed with entrepreneurship yourself. What are your thoughts? What have you experienced?
Right, so I think there are two things happening here. One is the workplace that we know of, the workplace that we inherited from the industrial age. But fundamentally, work is changing. The design of work as we know is changing. And organizations of future are not just hierarchies on top of each other. They are actually very collaborative, very interdependent ecosystems. So when I look at that trend, I think that's a great opportunity for us to, one, review this whole question of hierarchy and success, because I think it impacts both men, women, families, all parts of the society. And at the same time, it's also an opportunity to redistribute what we call power, resources, and I think entrepreneurial energy has a huge role to play in this. And that, I think, is a very significant trend that we are witnessing as we go out, talk to women all across the country. And while I guess the workplace, as you and I know of, is very it's very concentrated, right? It's concentrated in parts, it's in New York, it's in Bombay. But guess what? Digital's everywhere, technology is everywhere. So the future of work is going to also be far more distributed and collaborative.
Yeah.
And I guess that's a great opportunity to sort of, let more leaders be out there. It's almost a case of not fighting the old, but also building the new.
Sure. But let me ask you a specific question. Is it tougher for a woman to be an entrepreneur, at least in India? Or does it not matter anymore?
So, when you're at the job, it doesn't matter. But the fact is, a lot of us don't come from the place of privilege, So a lot of us don't come from the networks. A lot of us don't have access to venture capital. A lot of us have already fought a few barriers before we got there. It could be family. It could be, conversations with, your own peer group. It could be just internal barriers, because there's so much of conditioning that has sort of been, living inside the social structures that we are part of. So yes, in one way it is difficult, because you're already sort of bringing in a lot of stuff that's not part of the ecosystem. You're already taking 2 exams extra to pass the one that's at hand. But once you're an entrepreneur, once you're at the platform, once you're out there, then it's a level playing field. You got to sort of do the same things to win.
Absolutely. Asa, your thoughts and how you see the situation here in India and how you see it, overall internationally?
I think we still do see that some of the levels have a certain degree of stickiness to them in terms of not being able to have parity, and that is specifically at the higher levels of power, be it in government outside of India, in India, globally speaking, but also in executive levels. We do see that, and my partners here in the panel have highlighted that. So at the very higher level where power is very condensed, we have seen, I think, quite little disappointing progression, and we still have a long way to go to break not only the glass ceilings, but harder materials than that.
So let me ask you this. What do you think are the biggest factors that are inhibiting breaking this glass ceiling? What is it that's keeping women from really going out there and being in leadership position, and including some of the statistics which improving rather some of the statistics which are fairly dismal, as we know?
I think currently I'm still in a shock because we had a very good opportunity, but we were not able to pull that through. So I think there is quite a bit of internal reflection that has to be made. But you were also asking on parity in our own experiences. So for me, I have nurtured a career in the multilateral system. And I think we have seen amazing progress in the United Nations system. When I started, and I've been in some of the technical organizations, the Food and Agriculture Organization, IFAD, World Bank, some of the wings of the multilateral system, where progressively over the years that it has been amazingly more easy to be a woman, and I've been much more easy to nurture a career. However, when I started, and I know combining motherhood and the early stage of a career was really very difficult. And even there, we have seen some very important changes.
Absolutely.
In recent times,
Okay.
which is great.
Well, Sapna, same question coming to you. You also spoke about biases that we have to really overcome. What are the biggest biases, and what are the biggest factors that are preventing us from breaking that ceiling?
And I think the bias comes from mindset, and the biases that we're seeing are that, that women, once they do have children, are
So
not
motherhood continues to be the biggest challenge, so to speak.
I think it's also around, how are women vocal enough? Are they speaking up when they need to? Are they able to, handle your technical business kind of skills, or are they in more of functional support roles, right? I think there are biases that come in that sphere as well around what can a woman handle, and can she play the game? Can she network? Does she have the support structures to be able to do that? I think that holds a woman back.
Sure. Sari, you want to add to that? Do you agree that those are some of the biggest challenges that one sees?
Absolutely. I think, and these are deep-rooted biases, and they're all across. You walk into any country, you walk into, any city, you walk into any office, I guess there is bound to be, a bias penalty for women at the workplace. And it's a lot of hard work and a lot of commitment to get that out of the way. And I also feel, and it may sound a little radical, that one way to sort of really break the glass ceiling is not to work marginally, not to work in incremental folds like what we've been doing for the last 60 years, 100 years of, corporate structures, is rather to take the hacker's way. Somewhere those numbers have to start doing the 10x and the 100x in some way, and that could be just hacking consciousness to begin with. When there is enough conversation, change happens, and then there is a tipping point somewhere waiting to happen. And I deeply feel the same is going to happen with digitization and women getting online, and women and that's a tool of empowerment. That changes the game because you have a voice, you have identity, your core questions of self-esteem and everything else you were dependent on others for are now being solved by you. And that's it's catalytic. The change is faster at that level.
Okay.
Can I add something?
Sure.
I think the thing I always tell women on my team is that half of it is in our heads. The bias isn't just in society, it's in the way we think ourselves. And so we have these gremlins, in our head that are constantly saying, don't ask for that, don't say that. And ultimately, that's what's, women I feel are also holding themselves back. It's not just this, the situation that we're in. It's something that we ultimately can take accountability for and make change. And I think when you look at certain sectors like financial services and the leadership that exists there, right? You have a number of women CEOs, right?
Yeah.
So many, but that's not a coincidence.
And that's a fairly technical sector. And you mentioned about this perception that can women handle very technical roles,
Right.
and financial services is one area where they've really excelled.
But it's not a coincidence, right? I think it's come from Mr. Kamath himself has taken a lot of affirmative action, set up structure, and put it in place so that women were given a platform. They were actually trained. They were put in, a number of leadership kind of journeys that they could take together. And he's, created many women leaders, not just at ICICI, but they've gone to other banks. And so the question is, are we set up in that way? Are corporates doing enough? Or non-corporates or government? Are we setting our women up in the same way? We have a great example, but you don't see enough of those examples.
So Asa, your thoughts on this? I mean, the role of a good mentor who can really push this gender agenda forward in their organizations. Do you see that happening here in India? Do we require more men to come forth, or do you think the push really has to come from women themselves?
I think everyone has to play his or her own role in this particular journey towards this objective. We all have a role to play. And specifically, I think as managers, we have a very important role to play. And we can no longer tailor, I think, the grand solutions that should apply to all. But what I'm saying is that women at different ages require different types of support, and that we will need to tailor our workspaces accordingly. And I think technology there can be a very useful tool. for us. Because as a manager, it will be also quite impossible, but maybe you could be clustering your teams in accordance to the different types of coaching or mentorship models that are needed. But definitely, I concur with you that a lot more empowerment and mentoring and coaching amongst ourselves is really needed. And technology can help us in that.
Sapna, you want to comment on this, the technology bit? That really helps to sort of move the office away from the office, and it gives you more flexibility to sort of work in a slightly more flexible sort of manner.
Yeah. No, I mean, speaking from working at Google, I mean, it's fantastic when you see the kind of capabilities that we have, which not just Google has, but a lot of companies have. You don't have to be in the office.
Yeah.
I think people have always felt this guilt, you attend, if you're not in the meeting, then what's going to happen? But you now have a way to attend the meeting even when you're not there, whether you're in a different country, whether you're, at home because you're unable to make it to, to work. You now can join that meeting and have a voice, even if you're not sitting at the table. So I think technology that way has really changed the platform for working mothers, but even, for working fathers, right? We always say is motherhood a challenge? Fatherhood's a challenge as well, and it's helping, I think technology is allowing us to work in a different way that we haven't worked before.
Sure, so the options are there. Technology is going to be there. The question is it going to be adopted? What about mindsets? The very typical Indian mindset, I can't leave before my boss. I must hang around till at least 9 p.m. Otherwise I'm seen as a work shirker.
Yeah.
Is that mindset changing?
Absolutely. So I'm going to go back to what you said about workplaces, and I think that's a question of choice. So it's whether a choice that a workplace makes to say, I have 100 square feet. Should I put a foosball table or should I build a crash? And it's a choice workspaces need to start making, and I think that connects back to also the whole ecosystem of support and mentorship. And if you historically looked online, I think everything related to women was super pink. It was super stereotyped. It was all around 5 categories of cooking, parenting, fashion, relationships, which is great. But I guess the voice of the professional woman is yet not out there in numbers. All of us are just restricted to metros and, in rooms like this. And I guess that's the big hack, and that's the number that needs to change. And that change will happen when technology allows it. And allow me to share an example with you guys.
Please do.
So at Cheetos, what we feel is that there is enough ecosystem, there are enough jobs, there are enough opportunities, there are players that are playing their part in skilling, the government's doing their bit, partners like Google are doing their bit. Now, what if we just created conversations and a system of mentorship, peer mentorship, expert mentorship, senior mentorship or a domain expert mentorship? And that's what we did. So we put together this helpline, it's a career helpline on a simple Android app. And guess what? There are women logging in from villages near Lucknow, from villages like Chhapra and Balia in Bihar. We wouldn't have ever imagined that this is where it's going to go. But guess what? People are changing the game. The mindset is changing because now there is enough category out there. There's enough content, there's enough conversation, and if we just keep populating this, it's like we heard these 4 women talk about their stories. All of them have
pardon me for interrupting, but what are these women looking for?
So look at this. There are 4 women who we just heard, right? They all have very different contexts, which means success as one size fits all doesn't work. And that's what we have to allow technology to do, to enable their own little context. So whether it's by way of information, by mentorship, by a system of resources, or looking for opportunities, or working online, or becoming a micro entrepreneur, I guess those are the possibilities that will keep adding up. Imagine 100 micro entrepreneurs means there's going to be a large organization somewhere that somebody's built this. And I guess more women in the system is also the pipeline that we definitely lack right now to build the leadership that we need to build at the top.
Okay. Asa, your thoughts on this whole issue of who's moving quickly, who's moving faster. So some of the technology companies, perhaps because they're so at ease with the use of technology, are allowing that to be percolated down through the workplace itself. But in terms of sectors or in terms of different parts of the economy, where do you see a greater pickup when it comes to gender sensitivity?
I'm just really want to bring in the issue of the workspaces that we have forgotten, and that is namely where most women in India are employed, namely in the informal sector and in agriculture specifically. And we heard in the introductory comments that there is going to be a new attempt to bring in this huge part of the work space into the digital revolution or movement or highway. And I think that's going to be very, very critical. And I also do think that that is where you're going to see your big supporters coming forward in the big numbers. And those are women who are currently struggling with so many constraints. And we know that problems are the mothers of innovation. So I think we can expect a lot of innovations when we can tap into this, the real providers of workspace and in India today. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So when we're talking about agents of change, Sapna, help us drill this down to some very specific thoughts. What is your message perhaps out there, looking at your own experiences in the corporate space? What does a woman really need to do to ensure that she is heard and that she is moving towards that goal of becoming an agent of change?
So I think it's, I think the corporate, I'll speak on behalf of Google, it's Google's, need of the hour to make sure that we support women in the same way that Mr. Kamath did for the finance sector. And I think what we're doing at Google is to actually make sure that people are aware of these unconscious biases that exist. Because if we can put that at the forefront so that men, women, leaders, junior members of the team understand that there's these unconscious bias, then we can make change. And we can all be collective change agents. Because I think, in the past, people have said, oh, Sapna, why don't you be a role model? Why don't you mentor people? Why don't you, show, other women at the company that, you can have it all and be a mother and balance corporate stuff. But I can't change this myself, and agents of change have to be throughout the entire organization. So at Google, we are trying to ensure that every single employee in India as well as outside of India understands these unconscious bias when they are hiring, when they're promoting people, when they're doing compensation, increases at the end of every year, so that ultimately we can have an equitable workforce where everybody is inclusive, where people are at their full potential, and we're realizing the benefits of an inclusive environment.
Okay, Sari, your thoughts, what women need to do to ensure that they are taken more seriously and that they can move down that path of progression, and also what perhaps organizations need to keep in mind. It needs to go beyond just HR mailers and beyond policy notices, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the conversation is in everyone's hand. It's right from, the first time an intern walks into an organization, till the time, we're sitting at the board, deciding the future of the organization. I think these are very specific co-owners of gender parity at work, and at the same time I think we need to constantly evaluate our own assumption. I definitely feel the discourse has become very narrow, and until we open it up so that people with very diverse voices come into the discourse and make it richer, because gender parity is not just workplaces as you know it, it's industry, it's art, it's creative, it's rural, it's all across. And I guess and once we see those, it's hacking by numbers again, right? Those numbers adding up, change happening at a grassroots level, at the young women's level when they're entering the workforce, and of course at the corporate level where the bandwidth, the privilege is very different from that somebody who's not within the system. And I guess these two need to sort of...
But allow me to ask you this. Are you happy with the way a lot of corporate policy is shaping up? And at least at the policy level, sure, gender sensitivity, gender parity, these are objectives that are part and parcel of any core corporate ideology.
This is very relative.
But the question is, letting it drill down to the last mile, letting it drill down to the decision-making level, the hiring, the promotions, etc. Are you satisfied with the way it's being implemented?
If the question is satisfied, no, definitely not. But if you ask me 10 years ago where we were, or 5 years ago where we were, I think just the sheer number of organizations trying to make that effort, and it's a journey. It's an evolutionary journey for every single organizations. Some have definitely made a better grade than a lot of them, but
is that a sectoral thing? I mean, Sapna mentioned financial services, which have done phenomenally well in this country with respect to women.
So IT did for a long time, right?
Yeah.
IT did, and I think while IT did, product is not doing it. So there is a little discrepancy there. But at the same time, retail, infrastructure, manufacturing, these are sectors I think who have who are trying to play catch up, who are trying to get there. And I see, in fact, the most conversation I hear these days is actually from manufacturing, which is, very, very encouraging.
Okay. Would you sort of want to sort of give out a word there to Indian companies on perhaps what they can think of in terms of letting more people, letting more women have a voice and letting this agenda actually reach its potential, the fact that we want parity for women? Any thoughts that you'd like to share from the Google experience?
I'll just leave with the thought that I think companies are doing their part to make sure that women have the means, but I think there has to be a cohesive support structure put in place to allow women in the pipeline to be able to grow. I think sometimes we focus only at the top then, and we're not creating the pipeline at the bottom. So my message would be you have to start at the bottom and change the mindset across.
Okay, all right. Well, ladies, we actually have some questions from social media. So if you're up to it, let me quickly shoot these across as well. The first one is from Inderpal Singh, and the question is, why the top CEOs from around the world comprise only 1% of females? Basically, I mean, why is the number as little as 1% when we're looking at top global CEOs? Sarah, you want to share some thoughts?
So I think there are two things responsible for this. We all inherited the industrial economy. We all came from that mindset where obviously men got there first. It was built like that. It was built in a way that men worked 9 to 5 and women looked after children, at home. But guess what? Now, if you look at some of the, top CEOs, the GM CEO, Pepsi CEO, they're all women. They are,
And her remark, since you mentioned the PepsiCo CEO, Ms. Nui's remark about her own role at home, that of course sparked a global debate as well on the role of women.
Absolutely. So I think what we are missing out in this whole piece is that this agenda is not just women's agenda. It's actually a family conversation. It's also maybe bringing men into that conversation not only to support themselves but also to redesign success for themselves, because I guess those stereotypes just also hamper men and their contribution to the workspace and family.
Any thoughts, Asa? Why only 1% of the top global CEOs are women?
No, I think I agree with you that there is a lot of socialized culture and then also the networking where the recruitments are actually happening. And also the formation and composition of the boardrooms are also contributing to this particular perpetuation of power. So I don't know, I've seen some innovative solutions training women to be board members so that there will not be any excuses to say that there are no qualified women, for example. But it helps only so far because, again, you will have to access these particular networks. And I think all the unpaid work that women do also hold us back from engaging in the particular networking needed, one. And number two, from engaging in many of the important power spheres, namely also in politics. Because the moment at least the work is done, most of us, we just have to rush back home and complete our other big load of work. 75% of all unpaid work in India is done by women. So that's a case in point. So that balance, I think it really needs to shift. And you men out there, you have to start helping out.
That's a good message, and there we go, the audience supports it. All right, let me quickly take up the second question. Now, this one says, why is it difficult for some men to accept women as leaders? Sapna, you want to take up that?
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I mean, I'll say from my own experience, I've been lucky, and I think that's where you see the change happening. I don't think that men don't accept women as leaders. I think if women can have their voice, do a great job, and can showcase that they are better, if not equal, then men can accept it. So I don't know if I agree with that.
Okay, fair enough. Sari, your thoughts, and let me add sort of a corollary to it as well. If a woman wants to be taken seriously as a leader, then is femininity a problem? Does she have to behave, dress, act, speak like a man as well?
Yeah, so I think my answer to both these questions would be, I think what we need to do is we need to bring more empathy to men. And I think we have forgotten that in the process. The reason, resistance builds up when empathy dies. Somewhere in this process of gender relations, empathy has vanished. And I guess that's what we need to bring back, because how does this guy know that this is the perspective this woman's bringing to the table, or these are her strengths and this is her story, and vice versa, you know. And I guess that's the real gender dialogue out there, and, you know, agents of change, as you may call it.
Okay, all right. So the third question, and this is the last one for this morning: what can we do to ensure that women get paid equally for the same job? Asa, your thoughts on this? I mean, pay equality. Around the world, is it still a fight?
It is still a fight. I mean, it's still a fight globally in every country. In the country I come from, Sweden, is known to be a very equal country, but we still have a pay gap of about 20%, and I think in India the gap is, very substantive. So that is still an issue, and of course it has to do with the types of chores that are being performed, but it also has to do with the metrics of performance, for example, and to be clear about them. It also has to do with women's ability, I think research has shown, to negotiate the value also that we are bringing to organizations. So it's a complex of issues that have to be dealt with together.
All right. Sapna, thoughts on pay parity?
No, I think, this is another place that technology can help. The systems and structures can be put in place to ensure that there's equity across. Like, gender shouldn't really necessarily be taken into consideration. Even as Google, when we're hiring, we're trying now not to consider whether it's a male or a female that's applying for the job. The facts are the facts, and the facts should be the facts with compensation. So it would be great to see have a vision where it doesn't come into place. I mean, it's easier said than done, because decisions aren't always made by computers, but hopefully as we go forward, they'll play a bigger role.
Absolutely. Sari, you want to share some thoughts on this?
Absolutely. I think one, transparency in, reporting. So if you didn't know whose numbers are these, then, I guess that settles the question to begin with. But I guess as you're building the pipeline, as younger men and women come into the system, creating voices around parity, right? And some tech CEOs have done a great job. Salesforce did a great job where the CEO got him and say, yes, we recognize the gap and we're going to plug it by, bringing everyone at par, and then let the systems take over, because there is an intervention required before the system takes over.
Okay, well, interesting thoughts, ladies. Thank you so much for your time, and hopefully this will keep the debate alive and kicking, and hopefully it will take us several steps forward in the goal of achieving parity at work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Here's looking forward to a better work environment for women all over. Thank you, Ms. Chahal, Mrs. Chadda, and Dr. Torkelson, and of course, Ms. Upadhyay. Now, ladies and gentlemen, to tell us the untold story of India's women culture, we have with us today Luisella Maza, Head of Operations, Google Cultural Institute. Please give it up for her, please. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for being with us here today. And we're going to get started. It's a true honor, a real privilege to be here with you today. It's very, very exciting. I'm hoping that we can reflect on the untold stories of women in culture of India, the project we are launching today, and take also the opportunity to think about what Google Arts and Culture is and what it does together. So we're going to start from that. We're going to start from Google Arts and Culture, the initiative that Google is leading to make more culture more accessible to everyone, everywhere, for free. We started off back in 2011 with, 5 years ago, there were only 17 museums that have come online on this platform, very brave, pioneering museums that have decided to share their heritage online. And today, there are over 1,300 institutions that have joined this initiative, that share this vision, that share this mission to make their heritage, their culture, their collections more accessible. There are more than 50 million people that visit this platform, and over 6 million images, videos, archival documents, and artifacts that are online today. In India, it's been a tremendous history of success. We have been very, very fortunate with great partners that believe in this mission to share more Indian culture, to make it available with the world, with everyone, everywhere. We started off back then in 2012. The National Museum and the National Gallery of India came online, embraced this mission, embraced this vision, decided to share their heritage, and have opened up the doors for many, many other institutions that go from the Archaeological Survey of India, focused obviously on archaeology, but many, many different fields of culture of India are coming online, from street art to dance and music in performing arts, to collections very, very well known, like the Dr. Baudajilad Museum here in Mumbai, to those related to a completely different field of culture that was natural history, one of our most recent and most successful projects that have seen huge participation around the world for partner institutions, including here in India and particularly here in Mumbai. So it's particularly exciting today for me to announce the launch of the latest and the newest project here, as we are approaching these, at the end of almost a year of work. The project is the Women of India Unheard Stories, and this is in your pockets today for free, available to anyone, anywhere, on Google Arts and Culture. So what is this project about? What have we set off to? There are more than 20 Indian partner institutions that have shared the vision with us to bring the stories of these amazing trailblazers online. There are more than 50 digital exhibits, more than 10 digital 360 tours to virtually walk in iconic sites, over 2,000 images, videos, rare archival documents that tell the story of these amazing women. These really are the icons of India, the creators, the inspirations, and overall the change makers, those women that in the past and in present are continuously opening doors, are raising the bar, are overcoming incredible challenges for all of us, and are setting the pace for present and future generations. It's been a very personally very, very powerful journey for me to work on this project. I've learned a lot, and there are many different highlights that I'd like to share. But we're going to take a look at a few together, and a few opportunities and inspiration that I'm hoping you will also inspire you, and you will also want to share. For instance, let's take a look at looking at the project itself. Among the first things you'll see are the illustrated stories. And these are illustrated by young women artists of India that took inspiration from these icons to draw, paint, and bring these stories online. Or stories like the testimonials that we are going to take a look at, an actress that needs no introduction. And we're going to listen to her words and see how she feels about one of the iconic women that inspire her the most.
55. Rakhmabai was instrumental in bringing about the Age of Consent Act. She was India's first practicing female doctor and is an unsung heroine of yesterday and today. To me, she is an example that an ordinary woman like me can do extraordinary things if we invite a little courage into our lives. She was, therefore I am.
Women in India today are making a huge difference in many different areas. And so the stories you'll find online on this project will depict many, many different fields of creativity, of culture, of arts, of inspiration. what we are seeing here, for instance, are, and it's a digital exhibit about women making a difference in the economic field, the textile industry. Or here, women that are challenging and the stereotypes and opening doors and raising the bar in visual and contemporary arts. And it's not a thing of the present only. This is just an example of women that back in the day were already challenging stereotypes, were already raising the bar. And we brought in a special technology. In this particular case, what you're looking at, the National Museum has opened their doors to digitization, to bring more and more artworks online in super high resolution, and making use of a special camera we made available for these and many projects called the Art Camera, a specially designed camera that allows us to zoom in at a level of detail that takes us to explore a fine level that otherwise is invisible to the naked eye. So this particularly high resolution, I'm hoping you will enjoy to explore many, many artworks that will be captured in this format, including this portrait of women that back then already were challenging the stereotypes of women in sports and in this particular match of polo. So how does this all come together? There are over, as we said, over 2,000 images, 2,000 artworks, archived, rare documents that are coming online. And sometimes, for the first time, they are available to everyone, everywhere for free. So I'm hoping you will enjoy this and take a look at how this all come together. Let's take a look at this project. Let's take a look at a quick recap together. So with that, I'm hoping that this has inspired you as much as it inspired me, and as much as I'm hoping this will inspire our daughters, our nieces, our family and friends that has amazing stories in their pockets or just one click away today and can share and bring it to others. The women of the past and of the present have been opening doors, have been raising bars for all of us and shaped society how we know it. So I encourage you to check out this project, to share, to join us, and I'm very much hoping you'll find this a joyful and enjoying moment for women of India, but of the whole world. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Ms. Maza, for bringing these untold stories to life. We've seen the kind of influence women have in culture. Now it's time to explore the influence of media and culture shaping perceptions that impact women. Joining us for the discussion are Randall Lane, editor Forbes, Frida Pinto, leading actress and member of the advisory board for We Do It Together, a non-profit production company for women empowerment. Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause for our dignitaries.
Hello. Okay, it's working. We can hear each other.
I got to tell you, I was backstage with Frida, and if you want to experience Mumbai, you just hang out with Frida because you see everybody in the city seems to know you, and you seem to know everybody. It's my first time. It's like having Sachin Tendulkar and Narendra Modi and Chris Martin all rolled into one because, again, a very, very popular person in Mumbai. So it's great to Thank you for sharing your hometown with me my first time here.
Absolutely, and I'm sure everyone feels the same about you coming to our hometown.
It's a beautiful.
Even if you're from Delhi, Rajan. I saw you in the crowd somewhere.
So let's talk. Again, we all know your amazing work as an actor, but maybe we could talk a little bit about your transition or your evolution from actor to activist.
Right.
And how that happened, and maybe you could walk us through that a little bit.
Okay. I think when you grow up in a city like Mumbai, Bombay, as it was before 1996, it kind of is a natural process to absorb what you see in your environment. And if you are of that sensitive nature, or the nature that actually is affected in a good way and a constructive way to want to do something, Bombay is one of the best cities to be exposed to that. So growing up, whether it was going to school or on my way to college in the local Bombay trains, there was always these two worlds that would mash up together in a very, very explosive way. And that would be the world of the educated, the world, the middle class, the world rushing to make it work, the world trying to move up the ladder. And then there'd be the other world that is literally struggling to come anywhere close to where that other struggling world actually exists. And then, of course, there's the other world, which you have seen and probably experienced, which is also really, really far away from the world that I'm talking about, which is really struggling to meet the middle-class world. I came from the middle-class world, so I was on my way to college, and I would constantly meet these really young kids begging on local trains, singing to make some money. And the one incident that really, really changed it for me was when I was rather young. My mom was a teacher. And I was on my way to, I think it was mom's school. I didn't go to mom's school. Mom would not have me go to her school. She was like, no way. Yeah. I would be the miscreant and she would be totally embarrassed. She was already embarrassed, so yeah, that would just be pushing it to the next level. So I was on my way to mom's school, and there was this little girl by the name, who I befriended, asked her what her name was, little girl named Pinky, probably 2 years younger than I was, who came begging for money. And I looked at Mom and I said, well, in civics class, I've been learning that education is every child's fundamental right, so why is Pinky begging? Shouldn't she be in school? Isn't there no school for Pinky? And Mom was quite dumbfounded by that, because I was all of 12 years old myself, and she had no answer to give, but the best answer for her to give, which I guess parents have to do in order to kind of, brush things off. She said, why don't you complete your education and find your own way to help Pinky? So pretty much from a very early on age, I was very much involved in whether it was, giving tuition or teaching young kids or being part of any street kid campaigns. It started very young. But I guess when it really kind of hit home was when Slumdog Millionaire happened, because I actually got to work with kids from the slums. I got to see the kind of activism that one can do in a position of power and authority. I realized at that point in time, it was more the red carpet, right? I'd walk down the red carpet and all of a sudden, Frida's wearing red. Red is the color this season. Oh, now it's blue, and lace is the trend this season. And I realized, oh my God, if I am capable of setting fashion trends, what if I took it into the area that I'm so passionate about? And so that's when I joined Plan International and Girl Rising, and decided that it was time to use my voice to scale.
And then how to choose?
How did I choose the two?
Your passion, and about specifically girls.
Yeah, I think one thing I was very clear about was I did not want to be a showpiece. Many a times you have celebrities who end up just being, and I kind of hate the word celebrity, but I'm using it because it is a commonly used word anyway. But it's very often that you find celebrities endorsing campaigns, but not really following it through. So what happens is there's a massive disconnect between the audience and what they're actually seeing if they don't see consistency and that work continue. So it's very, very careful about not falling into that trap. Mm-hmm. So when I spoke to a couple of the people that I work with at CAA, and I said, well, this is what I want to do. I want to make sure that I do field trips. I want to make sure that the work that I do can be carried out into the world, where I'm not just speaking to donors and sponsors, but it's actually people who want to be aware of what they can do. And so I found my non-showpiece organization, Plan International. Right. And from Plan International, there was a national progression to Girl Rising. Yeah.
And then how much of what you do, I mean, you have actor Frida Pinto and you have activist Frida Pinto. How much
do I dedicate?
Or no, more like how much of what you do as an actor do you think when you take roles about how it is as an influencer versus I act to give me a platform and then I'm an activist?
Right. It's a very good question because I've been asked this before by quite a few people. How much time do I dedicate to my nonprofit work and how much time do I dedicate towards the film work?
That's a boring question.
I know, and I say actually it's really hard to answer that question because they both gel into each other. The kind of roles that I have played, except for one or two showpiece roles, I guess every actor, female actor, has to make that mistake to realize they never want to do it again. You never want to be the showpiece. And I make sure that the roles and the characters that I pick, big or small, further the things that I actually want people to see, which is female women actors in strong roles, in strong speaking roles, but the only thing they're saying is not help me or bachao, whichever you want to. Bachao is help me in Hindi. You probably understood that. No, can't do that. So based on that idea, actually not too long ago, in this May, I launched, along with 42 other women in Hollywood, a film fund called We Do It Together, which is a campaign about pushing forth female-driven stories. And by female-driven stories, we don't mean charitable stories, the stories of the raped woman, the stories of the woman who never made, the woman who died, or we don't want to be telling soppy, sad stories. There's comedy to be told, women in comedy, women in action, women in small-budget films with really powerful roles, women who are great wives even. We don't have to be, we don't have to keep men so far out of this question that it starts getting polarizing. We started this female fund. The main objective of it, though, was after some terrible data that came out, which was just 7% of Hollywood directors happen to be female. And that was ridiculously difficult to digest. So we decided we were going to change that game, and we started We Do It Together. And
so We Do It Together, it's not just about the stories you tell,
but it's
about
also
the
about
storyteller.
It's about the storytelling, and it's about who's telling the story. In fact, I'm very excited. I could probably share this over here. The first film that I am going to produce, one of the things that which also will be kind of with We Do It Together, we want them to be part of this. And I will explain how We Do It Together works. But one of the things I said was, let's make sure that every head of the department in this film is going to be a woman. So whether it's the directors...
You heard it here first, so that's cool.
No, it's true. Our writer is female. Our director is Katya Lund, who co-directed City of God. I already found an amazing female DOP. And we're going to make sure that with makeup, with hair, with every other department, head of the department is a woman, because we can do it.
Right.
It would be a myth to think that if we run households, we can run a movie.
So is the idea to drive stories that aren't otherwise told, or is it just to make movies, but from a different point of view because a woman is directing and doing all the,
Well, there are two things. I feel women's capabilities, her ambitions, her intentions, when she is chosen as a female director, are always questioned. There's a very, very famous story in Hollywood about this film that was directed by David O. Russell called The Fighter. And the woman who was actually up for the role happened to be the highest grossing female director from a movie called Twilight. Has anyone heard of Twilight? Guess what? She didn't get the part as a director because she was female. And not too long ago, I was looking for funding for one of my female-driven stories, which was very athletic in nature. I ended up meeting a couple of investors and one male investor from a very big studio. I said, what about Jodie Foster? She'd be amazing. And he absent-mindedly let it slip. But why don't we get someone who has stamina? And I don't think he realized what he said to me in that moment, because it is such a mindset that women don't have the stamina to run something like this. And I just looked at him, he looked at me, and he pretty much knew I was never going to see his face again. And I walked out, and I was like, wow, this is a mindset that we have to change. So the point behind a film fund like this is obviously the storytelling, telling female stories, but also doing it in a way that we have never been allowed to do, where we've constantly been questioned for, a woman's going to get married, and, when she's pregnant, she can't be a director, she can't act, or she has other things to take care of, like her children, so she can't be dedicated to a film project. And that's, in my opinion, and mind my French, complete bullshit. We can totally do it. And then the other objective behind it is the finance part of it, right? Economically, it is known, or rather a myth, that women-driven stories can't be funded because they're not really profitable at the box office. So we decided to challenge that as well. We decided that we were going to set up as a 501c3 as a nonprofit, and this is the business model behind it. We were going to get money from government grants. We are getting money, rather, from government grants, private investment, corporates. If Google's interested, they can also send money. Just letting you know, Raj. They don't have money? Get it, I'm walking out of here. Okay. So we get money from all these places. As we registered as a 501c3, the good news for them is that they have their tax rebate, they have their exemptions, exemptions. And as we go ahead and make those films, we invest into the project the money that comes from a nonprofit. So any profits made on top of that, we don't give it out to the various producers, we invest it back into the film fund. So we're a self-sustaining model in that sense. So for us, this has been a real kind of a breakthrough, and we're so lucky. In fact, the first film's probably going to go next year into Venice, and we have 7 amazing women. Robin Wright's directing her first short. Cartier is going to direct one. Catherine Hardwicke's going to direct a story that she's wanted to do, and we have many other, and Jessica Chastain's part of it. So
when are you going to direct one?
Soon. I need to sink my teeth properly into the producer role, and once I have complete understanding of what it takes to be a producer, I can justify to myself why I won't get paid well enough for a director role for my first film, because I know how hard it is, even with this first project. We're really scrambling to kind of make everything work, and there will come a day where female-driven stories and female directors will not have to go, or we'll take a pay cut because it's a female-driven story. Yeah.
Let's talk about Girl Rising.
Yes,
I know you're
my baby.
Yes. Why don't you, for those who don't know, why don't you give a quick summary of what it's about and how it came to be?
So Girl Rising started off as a documentary film, and I'm sure most of you have seen it by now because it did air in India as well. It is a compilation of 9 stories of 9 different girls from 9 different parts of the world, and the odds that they face in order to get a basic education to just fulfill their full potential, which we all have. But a lot of these girls in the various parts of the world in the story, like in India, we have just Afghanistan, Egypt, Ethiopia. Most of them end up having untapped potential because circumstances, environment, traditions, mindsets don't let them be free to do what they want to do. So the film actually started off as just a documentary film, one that we were going to put out into the world and create awareness. But before we knew it, it ended up becoming a movement where people were going, where are we going next with this? What is next? We are so moved and driven to want to do something. Is there a next step? And that's when we realized this can't just be a documentary film anymore. It had to roll itself out into a movement. And so in 2012, I introduced the film at the Sundance Film Festival. 2013. I'm totally blanking out on the year.
A couple years ago,
Oh, it's okay. I introduced the film at Sundance, and Holly, who was the then president, and Martha Adams, the creative director, who's still the creative director, we spoke about how we were going to go globalize and basically achieve scale with this model of creating awareness. The whole concept of telling this film was to create awareness so that people feel moved enough to want to do something. You can't do anything if you don't have information and knowledge, because that is key and that is gold. So we decided that we were going to find ways in order to go global. And the first thing I said to them was, what about India? What about my home country? What about my home, actually, where I feel there's much to be done, where I feel the country is actually ready. We're technologically getting super advanced. Everybody watches TV. I just read statistics that on a daily basis, it's about 2.5 or 3 hours of television that is watched in every household. And our youth are raring to go. Our media is raring to go. What about India? And I had no idea they would take me seriously. it was taken seriously, and rightfully so, Girl Rising India was launched.
Well, we have Needy Doobie, maybe, I think is backstage.
Yes,
we do. We have the point person for Girl Rising India
Yes.
with us. Needy, join
I
us,
have
please.
to, come on in, Nidhi. Woo! I have to say, she's my boss. I am so proud to have a boss like her. She's a human rights lawyer, our country director of Girl Rising India, and when we came into India as a dream, we completely forgot that the 1.2 billion population would need to have someone who championed it day in and day out with every breath. And that person for us has been Nidhi.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very well.
Thank you.
So tell us, so how has the rollout been and how's the reception been here in India?
Girl Rising, like Frida was talking about, it's such a beautiful dream project. And I think it is all about, like we've been talking about something since morning, storytelling for behavior and for mindset change. So like Frida mentioned, we brought it to India last year with a meeting with the Prime Minister, partnering with government, the Beti Bachao Beti Padhao campaign, and also partnering with Star TV, premiered it, and then reached out to millions and millions of people. And very soon realized that we cannot just talk about it at a mass media level, we really have to go on the ground. So we started working in the villages of Rajasthan and Bihar, working with adolescent girls and boys, parents, teachers, religious leaders, sarpanch, all the village elders, and bringing them together, talking about the role of education and getting girls to school. It's really, really inspiring to see that in the last 1 year, we've had, in the Tikri village, Alwar district, Rajasthan, playground where little girls could never step into are playing cricket with boys. And it's, taking the film and the stories from the film, it's just inspiring because it just really touches the heart. Just recently, we launched a campaign where the whole theme of the campaign is about inspiring parents to dream big for their daughters, like they do for their sons. We dream, we rise. And it's beautiful to see how this movement is catching on. And thanks to Frida, and Frida bringing other celebrities, on board, who's giving just so much momentum to the campaign.
It's great. It's great. What you guys do is great. Since we have both of you, we have some questions coming through social media. Maybe you could both address them. This being Google, of course, we've got high tech here, so maybe we'll flash them up on the screen. Let's see. With a survey across Facebook and Twitter, here's the first one. Do you think brand movements promoting gender equality are actually promoting a bias?
Do you think brand movements, I think you should answer that.
Do you think brand movements promoting gender?
What's the brand
Do you think?
Okay. It is a little tricky one. I just feel like using any platform, whether brands promoting movements. Personally, I feel any opportunity to promote this cause is a good one. But of course, there is a lot of trickiness about brands promoting equality, whether there is a bias, because we've seen some case studies of that as well. But I would still feel that any opportunity to promote is a good one.
I don't see how equality could be a bias, but...
Yeah.
But,
I think there needs to be also consistency. It can't just, when brands promote, I guess, a cause, they're also promoting themselves in a way, which is not a bad thing. However, when the consistency of it fails, I think that's when there is a loss of faith from consumers, buyers, and from the people they're trying to affect. And I have my own personal experience with a certain brand, which I don't wish to name, but it was a sanitary pad brand that did a test in Uttar Pradesh, and they supplied girls with sanitary pads for about a year, just to test if that would increase the number of girls going to school. And the second year onwards, they couldn't fund the campaign, which it was really surprising. I mean, you're just providing sanitary pads and you're telling me you can't fund it. And it was not a monetary thing, it was just that they needed to expand somewhere else. And so they cut the supply in the second year. So there was this whole group of girls entering puberty, and a couple of girls for a year who had enjoyed the comfort of actually having a sanitary pad and not a cloth, who were just shocked and disappointed and disrupted because of it, because they suddenly felt that this was it. The candy was taken away from them, and that was very disappointing. Yeah.
Okay, so if you get into something, stay with it. That's the
Stay with
moral
it.
there. Okay, next question. Why do the words surgeon, cop, pilot, boss, wrestler bring a male face to our minds?
Sorry? I can't. You go for that.
You got it right up there.
Oh,
Why do the
okay.
words surgeon, cop, pilot, boss, wrestler bring a male face to our minds?
It is so true. This is the deep-rooted stereotype, that we have, and this is what our campaigns, working towards, just breaking that gender stereotypes. Just last month, actually, we were in the villages in interiors of UP, and we played this little exercise of, what girls and boys wanted to be. And, girls were coming up with this slate and, writing with chalk saying, Prime Minister, surgeon, doctor, and they were boys who, want to be singer, chef, and so it's just so created, but it really need to break. It's a stereotype that we need to break away from.
I guess it goes deep down into the boys don't cry, girls play with dolls.
Exactly, and there's just so much pressure, I think, on the boys also.
Yes.
I mean, they're just not supposed to be crying because they're boys.
Yeah.
Watch more Frida's movies than,
Yes, please do. You will be crying.
All right, next question. Speaking of stereotypes, what impact can positive personalities in the limelight have on breaking gender stereotypes? What a perfect segue, your last answer.
Well, yes, we can play a very, very important role. I mean, just tonight, for example, you're going to see on stage every possible prominent Bollywood celebrity who's going to go up there and either speak about a cause that they have been supporting. Mr. Bachchan, for example, for years has been talking about the polio campaign, and about 2.5 years ago, India was declared polio-free. But it was his commitment to the cause and his constant dedication in terms of the time, effort, his presence that he gave to the cause that actually, what was the campaign called? Do Boond Zindagi Ki, yes. And I think that became synonymous with Mr. Bachchan. So I think there is
so it's going back to the consistency. You talked
consistency.
About staying
Absolutely, because now, even as of today, I was a child when I would hear that, but even as of today, when the first thing I hear about the polio campaign, the first person who comes to mind is Mr. Bachchan. And so I do think there is a very important role that you can play, but the lack of consistency can be a real problem. In fact, can also be sometimes negative.
Who's going to the Global Citizen Festival tonight? Raise your hand. All right, well, speaking of consistency, we're going to see these guys talking about these issues. They're very important. It's great to have a platform like this to talk about them. It's great to have a big platform like we're going to have tonight to talk about them. But thank you both for your work here and around the world. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nidhi and Frida, for sharing such unique insights with us. And of course, thank you, Mr. Lane, for moderating the discussion. As you all came in this morning, you would have noticed words, agent of change, being used everywhere. Who are these agents of change? Let's hear more about it from Miki Iwamura, Marketing Director, Google Asia Pacific.
Hi, everyone. Thank you again for joining us today. It's been really a pleasure to be here. It's truly inspiring to see there are so many innovative ways to address such a critical issue. As you may know, Google's mission has always been to organize world's information and make it accessible and useful. That is why it drives us to create tools that significantly improves the lives for everyone. But the gender inequality prevents billions of women from realizing full benefits of information and tools. So that's why we started the Womenwill initiative to help women to have access to information and tools. So there are 3 key beliefs that guide the initiative. The first one is gender gap exists across all countries, regardless of the development stages. And the second, access to information and tools can create opportunities for women. And also, it also drives economic growth. And finally, when women have these opportunities, they become agents of change. So now let's see how we can turn these beliefs into action. So in my home country, Japan, 62% of women stop working after childbirth, largely due to very inflexible work style that requires long working hours. So this is a big challenge for the country, but it is also a big opportunity for economic growth. So technologies such as video conferencing or cloud-based collaboration tools can fundamentally change the way we work. However, technology alone cannot solve this problem. So, as a mother of 2 children and also working mom myself, I know how important it is to have flexible work culture. But it is not the case for many women in Japan. So it's really heartbreaking to see that over 62% of women feel and believe that their society does not support working mothers. So this is hard. If you feel that you are not supported, you leave. So we started to work with like-minded companies and people to change this norm and culture, to create more inclusive workplace and inclusive society. So let's now see a story of Momoko going back to work after maternity leave and see what happens when women feel supported.
10番開こうおいで自分がその生活ができるかなっていう不安はあります。やっぱり仕事もして帰ってきてから家事もしてっていうのを全部完璧にやろうとするとすごいストレスがたまるんじゃないかなっていうのも今思ってます。
それぞれの企画を考えてきてもらってると思うので、それを1人ずつ、発表したいと思います。じゃあ、モニターを見てもらっていいですか。せーの、ももちゃんお帰り。みんなで復帰に向けて応援のアイデアをちょっと出し合って。本当子供って風邪ひきます。その手に預けられないけど仕事したいって時は一緒にぜひ親子出社して。ママだからって仕事を任されないのすごく寂しいと思うんですよね。全面的にサポートするのでどんどん欲張ってほしいと思ってます。期待してます。
仕事の予定じゃなくて家族の予定を先に言ってください。
ももさんの復帰をすごい心から応援してくれてる人とつながってます。こんにちは。
会社でも家でもいつも笑ってる女性でいてほしいです。
新しい世界がちょっと見えてきたじゃないですけど、そういう感じがしてワクワクしました。
So our aim was to create a movement to change work style from work hard to work smart, and also create an environment where working mothers feel supported. So to date, over 1,000 companies and organizations joined this movement. So now let's talk about India. So meet Nagalakshmi. She's a local seamstress, a mother of one living in a village in Andhra Pradesh, a 2-hour bus ride from the nearest town. Until recently, she said she spent most of her life in the 4 walls of her house. But she wanted to send her daughter to school to be educated, unlike herself. So she's one of those 88% of women in rural India who think that the internet is only for their husbands and brothers, and never get the chance to gain the knowledge and skills from the internet. So we know we need to help, but we also know that we cannot do it alone. So this is Bhuji. Bhuji is Nagalakshmi's neighbor. She lost her husband a couple of years ago, and since then, she's been raising her daughters with the support of the people in her village. So in return, she wants to help them. So women like Bhuji inspired us to create Internet Sati program in partnership with Tata Trust. So the idea is quite simple, but very powerful. So women in villages help other women to learn to use the internet. So we provide digital training, data-enabled devices, and teaching materials to internet savvy so that they can pass knowledge on to their communities. So Bhuji helped Nagalakshmi how to use the internet. So Nagalakshmi now has access to the information she needs to expand her skills. So she's now selling her handmade blouse at 300 rupees, which is triple of what she was earning for them before. And more importantly, she's also able to send her daughter to the best school in the area. Yeah, thank you. So as Rajan said in the beginning, today we have reached more than 40,000 villages across India, and also over 1 million women across India. And this is really thanks to this wonderful internet savvy. So huge applause to them. So as I said in the beginning, so gender gap exists. We know that gender gap exists, but we also know that access to information and tools can create opportunities for women. And these opportunities can make women to be agents of change. So we aspire to reach 300,000 villages across India, and also 1 million people to help women to get back to work in Japan. So, but this is just the beginning, and we hope to work with all of you because we know that when women prosper, everyone prospers. So thank you. So now, it's my very an honorable role to introduce very inspiring agents of change, our internet Sati,
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have a slight plan change because of a little bit of lack of time and of course because of his schedule as well. Before we get into our Internet Sati panel, I would like to call on stage Mr. Shiv Khemka, Chairman, the Global Education and Leadership Foundation, for a short note. Please welcome him on stage, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry to change the program, but I have to rush to the Global Citizen Festival. Everyone's waiting for me, and we're running a few minutes late. I'm really delighted to be here today, to have heard some of the wonderful speakers. Our foundation, the Global Education and Leadership Foundation, is passionate about ethical leadership. That's what we're really focused on. And ethical leadership, I think, is the need of the hour. Whether you look at the US elections or political change around the planet, I think it's so important to have people that can really lead with ethics and altruism. So the 4 pillars of our foundation are really leadership skills, ethics, altruism, and a bias for action. We reach 3 million children around the world, 14 countries including India. We have selected 300 young people that exhibit these qualities at schools, and they are at colleges today. And the events that have happened this week, including the support for this event from T-Guelph, and the event that hopefully all of you are attending this afternoon at MMRDA grounds, which is the Global Citizen Concert, which is really not a concert or a festival, which starts at 1:30 and ends at 10, and is about bringing different parts of society together. Pop culture meets public policy, meets values and spirituality. That's really what the event is about. And we're going to make commitments. People are going to make commitments on stage, which we're going to be accountable for. And young people around the country are going to start looking and making sure that we are accountable for these things. None of this would be possible without technology. So we're great believers in technology. We think technology can actually change everything. And I'm very passionate about education. And I believe actually that there's a tsunami coming in the education space in technology, where any child anywhere will be able to use their mobile phone to be able to get any information and actually pull to them the information they need to learn and to grow and to develop and to contribute in society. In terms of women, I'm surrounded by strong women. My wife, I have 3 daughters. My mother was one of the first women pilots in the country. My wife's grandmother, etc., etc. So for me, there's never been any doubt which is the stronger sex. We are absolutely convinced that women are the foundation, and my mother has always taught us that women are actually the foundation, the guardians of many of the values that unfortunately many of the men in our society squander and waste. We would have a much better planet, I believe, if actually the wisdom and the strength of women were able to actually be brought together to lead. In our foundation, we're delighted to say, as we look for ethical, altruistic leadership, talent at schools and colleges, the proportion is many more women than men. Because the men may have the L and the D, the leadership and the decisive action, but they're much weaker on ethics and altruism, which I believe are actually the foundation stones of great leadership. We're very delighted to be partnered with Global Citizen, which is a movement of young citizens. Some young Australians, Hugh Evans and his co-founders, went to New York and said, we must create a movement of young citizens that care about the planet. We've partnered with the United Nations and the Sustainable Development Goals, and together we're trying to see how we can actually work together to create a movement of young people, working with corporates, working with technology, working with political leaders, working with the social sector to actually achieve the objective of ending extreme poverty on our planet by 2030. Last night we had a small dinner where we had a great spiritual teacher, and he said that's a very laudable goal. It's wonderful that you want to end extreme poverty by 2030, and I fully support that. But please don't forget also to work on ending not only outer poverty, but also inner poverty. So I would urge all of us to think about that journey, the journey of values, the journey of ethics, the journey of building a society that's more just, a planet where 0.7% of the planet shares 41% of the planet's wealth, or a planet where 8% of the planet's population, all of whom are, by the way, in this room, share 83% of the planet's wealth, is just not a fair planet. And so all of us need to do something about that and create equity. It's one family. We are one family, and no man is an island, and we need to work together on those issues. I was delighted when we started this program of Global Citizen, when I went to see my dear friend Rajan Anand, and I said, Rajan, this is something we'd love to start. This is a project we'd love to do with you. And he immediately said, absolutely, let's do it. It's a great idea. Let's work on it together. And step by step, this conference has come together. The event later this afternoon has come together. And we're very much looking forward to having all of you there. We're focusing, as you all know, on 3 of the Sustainable Development Goals. Goals number 4, quality education. Goal number 5, gender equality. And goal number 6, water, sanitation, hygiene. All these 3 are actually deeply connected, and we believe create a foundation for making progress on ending extreme poverty on our planet. I have brought along 14 tickets for this event in case someone doesn't have any tickets. We're going to give them out in pairs. They'll be at the desk. Titiksha Goyal from Google will be there. All of you put your names on a list. The tickets are going in pairs, and then there'll be a lucky draw. And hopefully those of you who don't have tickets will have a chance to attend the festival this afternoon. 4 are VIP tickets, and the rest are general admission tickets. So I will give that to Titiksha. Once again, I'd really like to say thank you very much for Google. I'd like to thank the government of Maharashtra, the Chief Minister and his team. I'd like to thank Wizcraft. I'd like to thank the TGELF team that have helped this, and the Global Citizen team, putting this together, bringing an audience like you together. And I hope this is the beginning of a journey. I'm a great believer that one event is nice, but the power of a snowball turning into an avalanche is really what we're trying to create. And technology is foundational and fundamental in being able to do that. In the last 2 months, we've had 15 million page views. Over 2.5 million people have taken action, social action, to earn 80% of the tickets that are free to our Global Citizen concert. And it's all been done because of the mobile phone and technology. We are delighted to be partnering on this with Google, and we very much see Google as a core partner with us in this journey over the next 15 years. Their commitment to this, the causes that they're working on to actually make the internet available to millions of people, thousands and thousands of villages across the country, which they will announce later on stage today, is all part of, I think, this opening up, this new consciousness that we're trying to build on our planet, of equity, of fairness, of justice, of no division in terms of gender, race, creed, religion, etc. So I'm delighted to be here, delighted to be given the opportunity to speak. I once again want to say thank you, and I want to, we're very grateful to Google for partnering with us on this journey and for being able to help in our small way. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shiv Khemka. Ladies and gentlemen, now let's have the internet Sathis, Lakshmi, Parvati and Chameli on stage. To moderate the panel, we have Nia Barjatia, Project Lead, Internet Sathi, Google India. A round of applause for her, please.
Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for being here. Let me give you a little bit of background before I actually have the Sathis, and I will totally give the stage to them and let them talk to you. But Shiv mentioned about creating a movement. And really what these Sathis are doing today is creating a movement in villages across India by just getting basic information, which people had no access to everyone across their villages. That's really what they're doing. And the kind of difference it's making is something which I think everyone would be surprised by, so I will let them talk about it. Before I introduce them, I should tell you they don't come to cities very often. This is probably the second time. First time they came to a city was to meet us in Delhi at our office. This is the second time they're coming to a city, so can we have a round of applause for them, please? Now let's get on. नमस्ते, बहुत बहुत आपका वेलकम. आपके परिचय से शुरू करें, आप सबको बताएंगे अपने बारे में थोड़ा सा. प्रीति, आप शुरू करिए.
नमस्ते, मेरा नाम प्रीति पांडे है. मैं यूपी स्टेट की देवरिया डिस्ट्रिक्ट से जागृति सेवा संस्थान से आई हूँ. मैं एक इंटरनेट साथी हूँ और मैंने अब तक 1000 लगभग महिलाओं को इंटरनेट सिखा चुकी हूँ.
1000?
जी हाँ, मैं थोड़ा, मेरा वर्क बहुत जल्दी हो गया. मैं एक टीचर भी हूँ, एक कॉलेज में पढ़ाती हूँ और जो मुझे विलेज मिले उसमें कि 3 गांव की लड़कियाँ उसी कॉलेज में पढ़ती हैं, तो मुझे सिखाने में बहुत सुविधा हुई. जब भी मेरा पीरियड खाली रहता है लंच टाइम में तो लड़कियाँ मुझसे सीखती हैं, इसलिए मैंने जल्दी कर लिया.
अच्छा, चमेली आप बोलेंगे.
नमस्ते मैम, मेरा नाम चमेली देवी, मैं हजारीबाग झारखंड से आई हूँ और मैं एक इंटरनेट साथी हूँ और अभी तक हम 800 महिला लोग को सिखाई हूँ.
सभी को मेरा नमस्कार. मेरा नाम पार्वती है, गांव सेवाकापुरा है. मैं मंजरी फाउंडेशन दौलतपुर से आई हूँ. इंटरनेट साथी का काम करती हूँ और मैंने अभी तक 950 महिला लड़कियों को सिखा चुकी हूँ.
तो क्या अब थोड़ा आपके बारे में बात करते हैं, जैसे इंटरनेट से उससे पहले आपका, तो सबको बताइए कि गांव में रहने का कैसा अनुभव रहा है आप लोगों का, कैसी ज़िंदगी रही है बचपन से लेकर अब तक, क्या लाइफ है आपकी गांव में.
मैं 4 बहन और 1 भाई और घर में 1 माँ है. मैं हिंदी से MA की हूँ. एक कॉलेज में सहायक अध्यापिका के रूप में कार्यरत हूँ. मैं नेहरू केंद्र से भी जुड़ करके सोशल वर्क करती हूँ. जागृति से भी मैं सोशल वर्क करती हूँ. इतना सब कुछ करने के बाद भी मुझे लगता है कि आज भी गांव की महिलाओं को बहुत सारी समस्याएं हैं. उन्हें बहुत सारी समस्याओं से जूझना पड़ता है. महिलाएं गांव में वर्क तो बहुत ज़्यादा करती हैं लेकिन उन्हें कोई इज्जत नहीं मिलती है, कोई रिस्पेक्ट नहीं मिलता है. ये लोगों की संकुचित सोच के कारण ही है. गांव में लोग लड़कियों की पढ़ाई के लिए, अगर कोई लड़की कह रही है कि मुझे बाहर जाना है, 4 लाख रुपए लगेंगे पढ़ाई में, तो वो पैसे नहीं इन्वेस्ट करेंगे. हाँ, भले ही खेत बेच करके उसकी शादी के लिए 10 लाख दहेज दे देंगे, लेकिन उसकी पढ़ाई के लिए, उसे आत्मनिर्भर बनाने के लिए पैसे नहीं खर्च करते हैं. तो मैं इस सोच को बदलना चाहती हूँ. गांव की इस महिलाओं की समस्या को दूर करना चाहती हूँ. जो शोषण है उनका, अपने उसे दूर करना चाहती हूँ.
चमेली,
क्या
आप अपने बारे में थोड़ा और बताइए कि आपके गांव में आप कैसे बड़ी हुई, क्या आपकी ज़िंदगी में क्या क्या अनुभव हुए आपके.
मैं जब 13 साल की थी और 9वीं क्लास में पढ़ाई कर रही थी तो मेरी दीदी का देहांत हो चुका था और उसका बच्चा 8 साल का था और मैंने स्कूल जाती थी और फिर वो बच्चा को देख के मुझे बहुत दया आता था. तो मुझे लगा कि बच्चा का कोई है नहीं तो इसकी माँ बन जाए हम. फिर उस बच्चा को गोद ले ली मैंने और उनके पापा से शादी कर ली और अभी वो बच्चा 18 साल का है, 9th क्लास में पढ़ाई कर रहा है. और एक मेरी बेटी है, वो अभी 12वीं साल की है लेकिन निःशक्त है, यानी चल फिर नहीं सकती है. और मैंने अपने जीवन में संघर्ष कर चुकी हूँ कि जितना भी कठिनाई आएंगी सब कठिनाई को सामना करके अपना जीवन करेंगे.
पार्वती, आप बताएंगे.
मेरे जब बचपन में थी, जब मेरे 4 बहन थी, 2 भाई है, मेरे पिता की मृत्यु हो गई. मेरी मम्मी ने मुझे 5वीं क्लास तक पढ़ाया और मैं पढ़ती थी. जब उस स्कूल में बहुत होशियार थी, मैं पढ़ने में बहुत सक्सेस थी, तो मैं 5वीं तक पढ़ के बैठ गई. तो टीचर मेरे मम्मी के पास आते कि इस लड़की को और पढ़ाओ, ये बहुत होशियार है, पढ़ने में इनका बहुत मन है, पर नहीं पढ़ा पाई, गरीबी स्थिति थी. इसलिए उसके बाद मेरी बड़ी बहन के साथ 12वीं क्लास में 12वीं उम्र की मेरी शादी हो गई. तो शादी के बाद ससुराल वाले ने, पति ने मुझे पढ़ाया. 10वीं पास मैंने ससुराल से किया. तो उसके बाद मेरे फिर बच्चे पैदा हुए, इसलिए मैं आगे नहीं पढ़ पाई.
अच्छा, तो आप लोग सब इंटरनेट साथी कैसे बनी, सबको बताएंगे कि आप इंटरनेट साथी का आपका कैसे, किस तरह से आपको मालूम जानकारी पड़ी, क्यों आप इंटरनेट साथी बनना चाहती थी?
मैं जागृति जिस सेवा संस्थान से आई हूँ, वहाँ से मैंने ब्यूटिशियन किया था, पर मैं वहाँ कुछ करती नहीं थी। लेकिन हाँ, जो हमारे आसपास की महिलाएं थी वो किसी वजह से त्रस्त थी, प्रताड़ित थी। उनके अंदर सिलाई कढ़ाई ब्यूटिशियन का हुनर था, लेकिन वो परिस्थितिवश या उनके पास पूंजी न होने की वजह से वो अपना खुद का व्यवसाय नहीं कर सकती थी। तो मैं उन लोगों की बात जो है अपने जागृति सेवा संस्थान यहाँ सरलों से बात करके मैं उन लोगों को घर पे ही सेंटर चलाने के लिए दिलवाई। ऐसा 3-4 महिलाओं का मैंने किया है। तो इससे जागृति से और हमारा संपर्क काफ़ी अच्छा हो गया। जब गूगल की स्कीम आई तो वो लोग मुझे फ़ोन करके बुलाया और बताया कि इस तरह की स्कीम है। पहले तो मैंने मना कर दिया कि मैं कॉलेज में भी पढ़ाती हूँ, NYK से भी जुड़ी हुई हूँ, मैं नहीं कर पाऊँगी। लेकिन उन लोगों ने प्रेशर दिया कि नहीं, तुम्हारा सोशल वर्क का फील्ड है और तुम्हारा ये रुझान है, तुम इसे अच्छे से कर सकोगी। फिर मैं घर आई, मैंने सोचा कि मैं महिलाओं के लिए ही कार्य करना चाहती हूँ, उनके शोषण को दूर करना चाहती हूँ। तो ये मुझे अच्छा प्लेटफॉर्म मिलेगा, उन तक पहुँचने का अच्छा जरिया है कि मैं महिलाओं की स्थिति को समझ सकूँगी। और इसलिए मैंने एक टीचर होने के बावजूद भी मैं आई साथी बनना ज़्यादा पसंद की।
अच्छा, चमेली
जी मैम,
आप इंटरनेट साथी क्यों बनी?
मैं इंटरनेट साथी इसलिए बनी कि मेरे गांव में देहात है और महिला लोग बल्कि कुछ जानकारी नहीं था, और मैंने सोचा कि महिला लोग के साथ इंटरनेट के विषय में जानकारी दे तो दीदी लोग बहुत खुश होंगे। तो अभी दीदी लोग बहुत खुश रहते हैं। और वहाँ के जो बच्चे हैं 20 किलोमीटर दूर जाते थे रिजल्ट देखने के लिए भाड़ा लगा के, और लेकिन अभी जब से इंटरनेट हो गया है तब से हम लोग इंटरनेट से बच्ची और बच्चों लोग को गांव में ही रिजल्ट दिखा देते हैं।
अच्छा,
इंटरनेट से यही फ़ायदा है।
पार्वती,
जब हम पहले इंटरनेट साथी बने, जब हमें बहुत डर लगा ये इंटरनेट कैसे चलता है कैसे नहीं, नाम तो सुना पर देखा नहीं। जब पहली बार इंटरनेट टैबलेट हाथ में ली हमें बहुत डर लगा, ये इससे करंट तो नहीं आ जाएगा, ये ख़राब तो नहीं हो जाएगी। तो हम समझते कि इंटरनेट एक कंप्यूटर पे चलता है, ना कि मोबाइल पर चले। तो पहले सबसे पहले हमें मंजरी फाउंडेशन थे, भाई साहब आए ग्राम संगठन मीटिंग में कि आपको इंटरनेट साथी का काम आ गया है, इसको कोई पढ़ी लिखी महिला है उसको तैयार किया। तो हमारी ग्राम संगठन की महिलाओं ने मुझे चुनकर तैयार कर दिया कि और कोई महिला पढ़ी नहीं थी।
अच्छा, so just to give you a bit of context, what the Internet Sathis do is we train them on how to access multiple services and information on phones, and they have devices which are internet enabled, and they go from household to household within their village, letting other women also get access to the information and training them on that. So that is a bit of a background. So जब आप महिलाओं के पास इंटरनेट ले जाती हैं तो क्या क्या कुछ बदलाव आया, क्या लोग बोलते हैं, क्या चाहते हैं इंटरनेट से? आज इंटरनेट चाहते ही नहीं हैं बिल्कुल भी।
नहीं, ऐसा नहीं है। इंटरनेट से महिलाओं में काफ़ी बदलाव आया है। इंटरनेट सूचनाओं का वो आदान प्रदान का सबसे अच्छा जरिया है, और समय और श्रम की बचत भी है इंटरनेट से। पहले गांव से स्टेशन बहुत दूर है या कुछ भी, तो बहुत हमारा समय इन्वेस्ट होता था। अब हम जो है घर पे ही बैठ के ट्रेन का टिकट देख लेते हैं या इस टाइप की जानकारी ले लेते हैं। कोई भी काम को करने में पहले हमें नॉलेज नहीं था, किसी से पूछना पड़ता था या डर लगता था कि पता नहीं जो हम कर रहे हैं सही है या गलत है। लेकिन इंटरनेट की वजह से अब आत्मविश्वास आ गया है कि गूगल पे सर्च करके देख लो क्या है कैसा है। तो इसने हमारे अंदर जो झिझक थी, जो डर था, उस डर को ख़त्म किया और आत्मविश्वास पैदा किया। जब मैं महिलाओं को इंटरनेट सिखाने जाती थी, उसमें कि एक दीदी है जो कि सिलाई कढ़ाई करके अपना काम चलाती थी। गांव में बहुत कम पैसे भी मिलते हैं सिलाई कढ़ाई के। मैंने उनको बताया कि आप जो है इससे ब्लाउज़ की डिज़ाइन को सर्च करके देखो और नई नई डिज़ाइनें बनाओ। उनको मैंने सिखाया और वो आज ब्लाउज़ की नई नई डिज़ाइनें बना करके, और उनके हस्बैंड उन्हें छोड़ दिए हैं, उनकी 2 छोटी बच्चियां हैं, वो स्वयं जो है अपना परिवार का भरण पोषण कर रही हैं। और इंटरनेट की वजह से वो आज इतना आगे निकल चुकी हैं कि अब उन्होंने ये निर्णय ले लिया है कि मैं अपने परिवार का भरण पोषण खुद ही कर लूँगी, मैं अपना खुद का घर बनाऊँगी, पति के आश्रय पे नहीं रहूँगी। तो काफ़ी हद तक बदलाव आया।
चमेली
जी मैम,
आप जब इंटरनेट साथी बन के जाती हैं लोगों के पास, इंटरनेट के बारे में बताती हैं, तो क्या देखा है? मतलब आपका कुछ बदलाव है?
जी, मैं जब गांव में जाती थी तो दीदी लोग, महिला लोग हमसे बोलती थी इंटरनेट क्या है, कैसे आप जानते हैं कि इंटरनेट सही। तो मैंने बोला कि मैंने सर्च करके दिखाया कि इंटरनेट के माध्यम से कि दिल्ली का किला, लाल किला दिखाया। तो दीदी लोग लाल किला देख के बहुत प्रसन्न हुई और दीदी लोग सोची कि हाँ, इंटरनेट एक माध्यम है, इंटरनेट सीखना चाहिए। और बहुत इच्छा से दीदी लोग अभी इंटरनेट का काम कर रही हैं।
पार्वती?
इंटरनेट जब हम गांव की महिलाओं को सिखाने गए तो सबसे पहले महिलाओं ने आगरा का ताजमहल देखा, वसुंधरा राजे का फोटो, आगरा का ताजमहल। और साथ साथ में ही महिलाओं को, लड़कियों को इंटरनेट सिखा रहे हैं और साथ साथ में ही रोज़गार दिलवा रहे हैं हम। तो ऐसे ही स्कूल में पहले खाना मिलता तो पर सही टाइम से नहीं मिलता, तो इंटरनेट के माध्यम से खाना भी समय पर रोज़ मिल रहा है प्रतिदिन। और जैसे ही दारू का ठेका है तो सारे दिन महिला काम करती हैं, फिर शाम को पति उनके दारू पी के उसको पीटते हैं, तो हमें बहुत बुरा लगा। तो इंटरनेट के माध्यम से हमने दारू का ठेका बंद करवा दिया।
इंटरनेट के माध्यम से कैसे आपने
हाँ।
बंद कराया?
और
इंटरनेट से क्या किया आपने उसके बारे में?
जैसे हमने बोला कि हमारे ज़िले में सूची त्यागी कलेक्टर है, तो हमें उसकी धमकी दे दी, ये तो इस ठेका को बंद कर दो और हम व्हाट्सएप पर फोटो नेट पे डाल देंगे। तो उन डर के बाद ठेका बंद करवा दिया। और इसी तरह से एक गरीब परिवार का लड़का था, उनके मम्मी पापा नहीं थे, घर नहीं था और खेत भी नहीं था, तो अनपढ़ था। तो वो सोच रहा मैं रोज़गार कैसे चलाऊं, कैसे परिवार का पालन पोषण करूं। तो मैंने इंटरनेट के माध्यम से उसको चायमीन बनाना सिखाया। तो आज वो लड़का चायमीन बनाना सीख गया और एक किराए पे ठेल लगा रहा है, 250 रुपये कमा रहा है, अपने परिवार को पालन पोषण कर रहा है।
अच्छा।
और इसी तरह से जैसे गांव की महिलाएं सब, सरकारी योजनाएं बहुत सारी आ रही हैं, गांव की महिलाओं तक नहीं पहुंचती हैं, तो इंटरनेट के माध्यम से सारी महिलाओं को जानकारी हम दे रहे हैं।
अच्छा, इंटरनेट आपके खुद में कुछ बदलाव आया है जब आप लोग इंटरनेट के बारे में जानी? एक तो हुआ दूसरों को सिखाने के लिए, पर खुद में क्या आप लोगों में बदलाव कुछ आया है?
खुद में सबसे ज़्यादा तो हमारे अंदर आत्मविश्वास पैदा हुआ। जो डर था, जो झिझक थी हमारे मन में, वो सब कुछ ख़त्म हो गया और काफ़ी हद तक ज्ञान मिल रहा है इंटरनेट की वजह से। हम सरकारी सूचनाओं को, सब चीज़ों को इंटरनेट से तुरंत जान जा रहे हैं।
अच्छा, पार्वती, आपके आपके खुद में कुछ बदलाव आया है?
हाँ, इंटरनेट साथी हम जब बने हैं, जब थे, एक तो पहले हम घर से 4 दीवारों के अंदर रहते, घर से बाहर नहीं निकले। और जब इंटरनेट साथी बन गए तो घर से बाहर निकल रहे हैं। एक हमारे शरीर के अंदर झिझक थी, वो झिझक दूर हो गई है, बिल्कुल झिझक नहीं लगती है किसी से। और काम करते समय जैसे अपनी फेडरेशन है तो हमें अच्छा काम करके दिखाया तो हम अपनी फेडरेशन के अध्यक्ष बना दें हैं। और साथ साथ में ही जैसे पहले हम घर रहते धौलपुर तक नहीं आ पाते, आज इंटरनेट साथी बने तो हम मुंबई तक आ गए हैं और स्टेज पे आने का मौका भी मिला है।
अच्छा, एक आखिरी सवाल। अब सोचिए कि ये जो आप लोगों के पास जानकारी है, जो आप सभी महिलाओं में जानकारी दे रही हैं, ये जानकारी अगर सभी महिलाओं को मिल जाए, जो आपको मौका मिला है कुछ काम करने का, सभी महिलाएं जो सभी गांव में हैं, उनको ये मौका भी मिले, तो क्या लगता है आपको, भारत में क्या होगा, गांव में क्या होगा?
तब तो कल्पना ही नहीं की जा सकती कि हमारा भारत कितना आगे हो जाएगा। सभी महिलाएं पुरुष के बराबर में आ जाएंगी, पुरुष के साथ कंधा मिलाकर चलेंगी। जो मैं महिलाओं के शोषण को ख़त्म करना चाहती हूँ, वो मेरा सपना पूरा हो जाएगा। हर महिला को ये स्टेज मिल जाएगा।
आप बोलो।
जब इंटरनेट साथी जैसे हमें मौका मिला है आगे बढ़ने का, जैसे हर महिला तक इंटरनेट पहुंच जाए तो सारी महिला पीछे पड़ी हैं अभी। तो जैसे पुरुष आगे बढ़े हैं, महिला पीछे पड़ी हैं, तो सभी महिला आगे का मौका मिले तो सभी महिला आगे बढ़ सकती हैं।
आप कुछ बोलना चाहिए?
जी मैम, जब मेरा हजारीबाग जिला झारखंड में इंटरनेट साथी गया, अभी तो ब्लॉक चुरचू ब्लॉक में काम हो रही है। अभी तो इतना महिला लोग जागरूक हो गई है, सबको ही इंटरनेट सीखने के लिए बहुत इच्छुक है और बहुत अच्छे तरीके से काम हो रही है।
अच्छा
जी।
So that's it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I should mention that Parvati has just become the head of a federation for the entire district because she has changed a lot. पार्वती, आप अभी अध्यक्ष बनी हैं अपने फेडरेशन के लिए, क्योंकि आपने अपने गांव में काफ़ी अच्छे काम किए हैं, जो आपने ठेका या बच्चों को खाना बनाने का काम किया है. These are really only 3 of the Sathis that we have. We have about more than 12,000 of such Sathis. And as Rajan would have mentioned earlier, our endeavor is to go to 300,000 villages and really reach out to, that's 50% of rural India, and the kind of change which you're seeing with 3 of them, if we could bring it to all the villages, I think something as basic as just getting information to people could make such a massive difference and bring about gender parity. We truly believe that when you teach a man, you teach a man, but when you teach a woman, you're really teaching the entire community, and that's really what these Sathis are doing. They're taking the internet not just to their own families or not just for their own selves, but all of them are doing it for the community. And we hope to see this in 50% of India, and we want to see everyone have access to information. And of course, by the end of it, it's all about gender parity, and we really believe that that will help women move forward much faster. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's been wonderful to have all of you here. We've had some great discussions. We hope we can continue these discussions with you. The Google team will be here. Do feel free to reach out to us. We have lunch available outside. And thank you again. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause to Neha and the Internet Sathis, Lakshmi, Parvati and Chameli. Every one of you for joining us for the Womenwill Today conference at Global Citizen India. Like Neha said, please do join us for lunch outside in the pre-function area. Thank you and have a